Today on the show, Dune Part 2 is out. Our minds have opened, and we awakened as Kwisatz Haderachs. We've got so much to talk about.
Welcome to Tabr, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. Oh boy, my name's Abu.
My name's Leo.
And folks,
Yeah.
welcome to the episode of the year.
Yep.
So this, of course, is our deep analysis, full breakdown, scene by scene, picking all the nits episode for Dune Part 2. But if you haven't already checked it out, we did release a spoiler-free review on the feed and a quick 50-minute spoiler cast where we just kind of gushed about our first reactions of the film. Today is much more comprehensive. We're going to go very long today, but we hope you'll be joining us on this lengthy worm ride.
It's true. And to be clear, if it wasn't already, today will contain so many spoilers.
Oh my goodness.
For both of the movies. We're going to be spoiling everything. Do not let us rain on your sandy parade.
That's right. And of course, at the top of every show, we must shout out our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons: Case Aiken, Daniel, Dion, Roman, Caballo, Jonathan, Lambert, C.R., Spruill. Thank you all so much for your generosity. This show doesn't happen without folks like you. And of course, our gratitude and our thanks extends to all of our patrons who support us month after month, year after year, and help continue to make Tabr a possibility.
Indeed. So, let's talk about the game plan for today's episode. We are going to go scene by scene, chronologically, covering everything we could spot and everything you may have missed in Villeneuve's newest film.
Mm-hmm.
And today's conversation is going to cover about half of the movie. We wrote a script. Normally our scripts are like 13, 11 pages. This is a 20-page script covering the first half of the movie. So we just literally had to split this, or you wouldn't get this episode until like 3 weeks from now. So
right.
You're welcome, and also we're sorry. And all of this comes with a rather large caveat.
That's right. So unlike the first film, we've only had the chance to see Dune Part 2 twice in theaters so far.
Right.
So today's deep dive discussion and analysis is going to be based purely off of our memory and the meticulous notes that we both scratched into our notebooks in the theater. For the first film, we obviously had this very unique opportunity to watch the film from home because of that like dual release on streaming platforms and theatrical during the height of the pandemic. And that made a deep dive analysis episode so easy. We could pause, rewind, rewatch whole scenes over and over and over again. We could turn on subtitles for things we maybe missed or didn't understand, or the exact quotes we needed to write down. We had none of that here for Dune Part 2, so we can't promise 100% perfect, unassailable accuracy today.
Yeah.
We might mix up the order of a sequence here or there. We might get a quote a little bit off, but we are going to do the best with what we have. And who knows, perhaps in the future, we will revisit with another episode once the film hits streaming and Blu-ray, and we do have the chance to watch it frame by frame.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident we got the layout of the movie right. So, dear listener, rather than fixating on the one or two things that I fucked up in writing this script, let's celebrate the 99 that we did well. All right? Stop judging. It's hard.
It's 20 pages.
It's 20 pages. And I left stuff out.
All right. Well, that takes care of our housekeeping here at the top. Let's take a short break. Let's prepare ourselves, dear listener. If you're not buckled in, buckle in. If you need some water, grab some water. This is going to be a long one. This is going to be a fun one. Right after the break, we're talking Dune Part 2 in all its glory. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back, everybody. My God, we've all waited long enough. Let's talk about the beginning of Dune Part 2. So this movie begins with the Sardaukar voice that we first heard in Part 1, bringing us a new message to keep in mind throughout this movie. Quote, "Power over spice is power over all." End quote. An adaptation, of course, of the "He who controls the spice controls the universe" quote.
That's right.
That we actually use in our outro. But I found an interesting interview with editor Joe Walker about why the Sardaukar voice was chosen for opening Part 1 and presumably continuing the trend for Part 2. And it was because they, quote, felt at one point it would be a good way to start the film with some hostile, aggressive dialogue. But it's actually a throat singer who Hans recorded and did all sorts of transformations to. End quote.
Interesting. There's always all this speculation, and we ourselves are guilty of this, right?
Yeah.
Why open with the Sardaukar quote? Why the voice? Why the throat singing? What does it mean? Is it a vision? Is it prescience? Is it this? Is it that? And it sounds like Joe Walker here is making it pretty clear that they just wanted to start on a very powerful, aggressive note to set the tone for this film, which is also a very valid reason. It's a creative choice.
Yeah. It's like it sounded fucking crazy. Enjoy. You should be scared and turned on a little. And success on both fronts.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's get into the movie. We get past the Sardaukar voice, and the film officially begins as we are introduced to two of the most important people in the Imperium.
Yeah.
The literal Emperor Shaddam IV Carino, played by Christopher Walken, and his daughter Irulan Carino, played by Florence Pugh.
Right.
Our understanding in this opening scene is that Irulan is sort of playing the part of the investigative journalist. She's recapping what is publicly known about the events of the first movie.
Right.
But throughout this, we also get a sense of what isn't known about the events of Part 1. Because later on in the film, as we know, she'll start to speculate, like, is Paul alive? Is he not alive? Who's this Muad'Dib?
Yeah.
So we're getting the sense that the rest of the Imperium doesn't know the entire truth of what took place on Arrakis here.
Yeah.
And I love that this movie started with Irulan narration. Of course, Part 1 started with Chani narration. But here we get Irulan, which is nice because not only is it a callback to the iconic 1984 film by David Lynch,
Yeah.
but it's also, to me, a reference to the excerpts that we get at the start of almost every single chapter in the book itself.
Yeah.
From Irulan's writings. So this sort of harkens to that in my mind.
Yes. Now, another thing that we see during this narration is a sequence of Irulan and Shaddam playing Cheops.
Hello.
Woo! Cheops, which is effectively chess in the Dune universe.
Right.
The terminology of the Imperium, which is an appendix to Dune, defines Cheops as, quote, pyramid chess, 9-level chess with the double object of putting your queen at the apex and the opponent's king in check, end quote. Which is what Paul does to Shaddam.
Hello.
So, again, a great way to open the film. We see father-daughter bonding time, but also we see a metaphor for what this movie is, which is galactic chess.
Right.
Now, it's also during this narration that Irulan tells us, quote, Shaddam loved Duke Leto like a son. Nevertheless, with Leto's death, quote, he said nothing, end quote. So she's kind of sussing out, I know that the Harkonnens have done shit for my dad before, but he was involved in this, clearly, because otherwise he'd say something about Duke Leto dying. And that's a bit of a change. I don't know that in Frank's books we have any reason to think that Shaddam loved Leto like a son.
Well, we do. Not like a son, perhaps, but he certainly was guilty in the books for having to do what he did to the Atreides.
He did.
Because he respected the Red Duke, and there's that chapter excerpt in the book from Irulan's writings where she talks about how sad the Emperor is because he genuinely respected, and maybe love is too strong a word. Love is the word that this movie chose, but he certainly was broken up over having to kill Duke Leto Atreides and his entire house.
That's a great point. So maybe a little bit less of a change than I thought.
Yeah.
Now, after this little intro sequence, we rejoin Paul, Jessica, and their new Fremen friends, and they're on their way to Sietch Tabr, following the duel with Jameis. So this is picking up almost exactly after the events of Dune Part 1. Now, literally, the first words Paul speaks are to Alia's embryo.
Oh my God.
Oh, man. I remember how much we were all talking, like, is Alia going to be in the movie? What's going to happen?
Oh, yeah.
And the first words we hear Paul speak are to Alia.
That feels like a statement. That feels like this movie saying, oh, you guys were really speculating whether we would cut Alia or not? She's fucking here.
Yeah, Denis was listening the whole time. He has bugs everywhere. This also is huge because it introduces Alia as a character, right? He's talking to his sister. It foreshadows her importance in the story. It reminds us of his visions and the sort of like the fact that he is, as he's consuming spice, kind of falling in and out of visions. And you pointed out here, and I agree, he says something like, I can't stop it by the time you're born, or like the world is a cruel and violent place and it's bloodthirsty. And, like I can't fix things before you arrive, right? Which implies that he is seeing the jihad, he's seeing the holy war. It also cues us that the events of this movie are going to happen in less than a year, right? Like, this is not the timeline of the book. We're not going to go 3 years forward at any point. So, again, a very effective way of communicating to us what to expect from this movie and beyond.
Right. Now, after that little conversation with his sister, our characters are on their way to Sietch Tabr. We join them in the desert. They're carrying Jameis's body. And at the moment, they've hit a bit of a snag because they've been stopped by an unexpected encounter with a Harkonnen patrol.
Yeah.
And the Fremen, Stilgar and the Fremen escort, leave Paul and Jessica. Stilgar tells them, hey, stay put, don't move. We're going to take care of this. Clearly, the Fremen have a plan. They've dealt with this sort of thing before, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, true.
They immediately do exactly what Stilgar told them not to. They sneak away into the crest of a nearby dune. And we see Paul and Jessica use their Atreides battle language to come up with some sort of game plan.
Right.
But unfortunately for them, they are off-worlders, right? They don't know how to operate in the desert or fight in it yet. And their escape plan is pretty shitty because the Harkonnens are like, wait a second, footsteps. Found them. Lucky for them, though, this is right when the Thumper starts to activate, calling the worm.
Right.
This worm is arriving, and the Harkonnen soldiers are like, oh shit, we need to get off of this sand before this worm arrives. And this feels like a classic Fremen tactic against Harkonnen patrols out here in the desert. And it's interesting to see the Harkonnens and the Fremen utilize different ways of fighting each other as they learn about each other's tactics in this war. But the soldiers do ultimately escape up to this rocky mesa. They activate their suspensors, and Hans Zimmer's incredible score, the brum, kicks in, and it's like truly breathtaking because you see them against the backdrop of the desert, like float up to this rocky outcropping.
So cool.
It's very cool.
And they get right to business. I mean, exactly to your point, the Fremen and the Harkonnens have been warring for decades. And so the first soldier who gets to the top, takes aim and shoots with a laser gun, shoots the Thumper, which is very cool. Stops its call. No worm today. No thank you. He cancels the Uber, right? And unfortunately for them, this is a plan within a plan because the Thumper wasn't the end goal. The end goal was to draw them up to the exposed platform. And one by one, they start getting sniped with some sort of projectile weapon. It is unclear to me what weapon is being used here. Like, Fremen don't really have that many projectile weapons. They've got Mala pistols, which seem more about like close range. They have maybe slings. I've seen bolt rifles in the prequel books. But whatever it is, it's clearly a formidable thing because it's like punching through the helmets of these Harkonnen soldiers. In response to one of them being shot, another Harkonnen soldier yells, "Shields!" But another one's like, no, don't, no, fucking don't. And this is because, canonically, using shields in the desert will attract worms and drive them berserk. They do not like shields.
Right. I liked that little tidbit. I will say, down with Paul and Jessica, once the camera cuts, it's kind of a funny moment because it's literally raining Harkonnen men
Yeah.
as they topple down once they're shot by the Mala pistols and the bodies rain down. One of the soldiers, though, is like, oh my gosh, I gotta get the fuck out of here. We're dropping like flies. And he has the wherewithal to jump down himself before he gets shot. And he lands with his back to Paul for a tense moment or so. But inevitably, he turns around, Paul sees him, and Paul has to spring into action. At the same time, though, there is another one that also drops down behind Paul that Paul doesn't see. But luckily for him, his mom also springs into action, and she comes up behind that Harkonnen and literally smashes his face in with a rock.
Yeah, brutal.
Absolutely brutal stuff. And of course, being both the mother and the Bene Gesserit that she is, Jessica does not miss a teachable moment here. As soon as she kills the Harkonnen, she starts lecturing Paul.
Right. Now, as a side note, there is this kind of shot that lingers where she's silhouetted against the sun. And especially on a rewatch, I couldn't help but notice it feels a little bit like his later visions about, I can't follow someone into the south. Again, kind of foreshadows some of Jessica's arc very early in this movie, which is cool.
That's true. That's a really good detail that you had in our notes here that I didn't even notice myself on both viewings. Well, regardless, the Fremen get immediately to work because there is water to harvest. They killed all these bodies, and all these bodies are full of water. So they use these really cool portable water extractor things to basically inject into the Harkonnens and quickly pull out any usable water from their bodies before getting rid of the corpses. And watching this, we get this movie's perhaps first moment of levity. There are quite a few funny moments throughout the film, but here Jessica is sort of watching them extract this water from the bodies, and it's kind of gross. Like the bodies are shriveling up as they dehydrate, and she actually vomits. And the implication here is either this is some sort of morning sickness. I mean, she just had a very adrenaline fueled couple of minutes here in this standoff, plus she just killed a person.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just triggering some morning sickness, some nausea because of her pregnancy, or it is disgust at witnessing these like corpses being shriveled up and pruned for their water. And I saw quite a bit of debate online actually about people not liking this. And I hadn't considered it while watching the movie the first time.
Right.
But after reading this debate, I kind of agree because
Yeah.
folks online are saying that a Bene Gesserit of Jessica's rank in particular would never, ever lose bodily control in this way, right? Prana Bindu, the weirding way, they have muscular control in inhuman ways.
Right.
To the point where Bene Gesserit can dictate the gender of their children when they get pregnant.
Right.
So for her to like look at something gross, or for her to even have morning sickness and involuntarily puke,
Yeah,
feels very out of place for a Bene Gesserit. And I do agree with that sentiment. That's a fair critique, I think.
I hadn't thought of this either, but holy shit, I agree. I think that's a really solid point.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most unbelievable things in this movie. You're like,
totally
talking fully conscious fetus. I'm like, sure. Jessica vomiting and not being able to hold it in? No, that's fiction. That's not real.
Yeah.
Now, cut over to Chani kind of reacts to this, but is harvesting a man's water. And she tells Paul, you fought well, once you woke up. And Paul's like, I wasn't sleeping. Totally missing the fucking point. But also recurs these themes of the sleeper awakens from the first movie, right? This constant theme of sleeping and awakening. The Kwisatz Haderach awakes.
Yeah.
So again, cool to see some maybe callbacks, but again, just like themes of Dune alive and well in these little moments between the characters.
Yeah. Now, Stilgar signals everyone to wrap it up. We got to keep moving, got to get to Sietch Tabr. And we get a couple of interesting moments here. First, we see that all the Harkonnen corpses, they get piled up, and a thumper is placed nearby. And Shai Hulud arrives, as expected. This is our first shot of a worm in this movie so far.
Worm!
Shai Hulud shows up, and it turns out that the worms are also running a municipal trash service.
Yeah.
And they come up and they just swallow all the bodies. A nice little snack for the local worm in the area. Then after that, instead of getting what we thought would be Jameis's funeral, that roughly takes place about here in the book, Paul instead offers to carry Jameis's body the rest of the way to Sietch Tabr. And presumably this kind of takes the place of "I was a friend of Jameis," that iconic line we know from the book and the funeral.
Yeah.
Here, Paul has some sympathy for the man that he's killed, and at least wants to respect and carry his body back home.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is taking the place of the full funeral scene. We see later the death still, and like Jessica gives water to the dead, but it does seem like Villeneuve has opted for, we're not going to get the full kind of drawn out funeral scene, which I'm kind of bummed by, because genuinely in the book, it was such an important moment that forced Paul to understand the Fremen as humans and multifaceted and deep and worthy of compassion. And on a reread, it's one of the most tear-jerking chapters in the book.
It is.
Like,
yeah,
I have shed water for the dead as well, because I too am a friend of Jameis.
I agree. We both gushed a lot about this funeral scene back during our Dune book club.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most emotional moments in the story, and it is a moment of true understanding for Paul. I will argue that because in part one, we didn't get the moment of Jessica going up to Paul and saying, "Oh, so you're a killer now?" Like her sort of reprimanding him, right?
Right.
Because he's got that like bloodlust after his first kill. He's feeling all high and mighty. I think that followed immediately by the funeral in the book is a powerful juxtaposition.
True.
Because he's feeling all high and mighty. He's a killer now. He got his first kill. He's a man grown. And then to see this body and the people like genuinely mourning over it,
right,
is like a gut punch in another way for him. It's a lesson like, oh, killing has consequences, and it ripples out and affects everyone in the community. And I think that, for at least for me, is what makes the funeral so powerful in the book, is that 1-2 gut punch for Paul, the lesson he learns there. We don't really have that in either part one or here in part two. So I think a funeral, while it would have been nice, and I'm sure they would have handled it beautifully, perhaps would not have been as impactful.
Yeah. And again, I'll also caveat everything. Throughout this episode, dear listener, I'm going to bring up things that I like don't like, or like that I have like criticism about. And I want to make it clear, this is still like a 10 out of 10 movie for me. Like,
yeah. Oh, of
rewatching it last night, I was like, fuck, this is amazing. Like, this is so good. So I understand. I'm trying to kind of like have my cake and eat it too. Just wanted to acknowledge that I am self-aware.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, the whole purpose of this sort of super nerdy lore, deep analysis episode is that so we can compare
Totally
the source material and the original text with the adaptation and compare and contrast what was lost in translation, what was gained in translation, what worked, what maybe didn't, what could have been better, all of that. Yeah.
I think also
it's fun.
We agree probably that it's like, if you're going to adapt something, adapt it so that it's good for the medium that it's in. You know, don't just like
100%.
try to recreate the magic of that first telling.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for new Dune fans to go and read the book and to have that like whole experience.
Right.
Very, very cool.
Discover the Jameis funeral scene for themselves for the first time.
Yeah.
And shed their own tears. How amazing will that be?
It's going to be awesome. So anyway, yes, I think there's a lot of ways to see this. Back to our kind of summary breakdown. We get a shocking change in color palette as suddenly we are in Ender's Game with like 3D like virtual diagrams of the planet and everything. We are seeing the Harkonnen command center in Arrakeen, where Glossu Beast Raban is trying and failing to keep spice harvesting activity at an acceptable level. Now, recall that attacking Arrakeen, killing House Atreides, cost House Harkonnen an unfathomable amount of money. And although that is that the house being deep in debt is kind of a small detail, it plays a big part in Raban's desperation and his anxiety around his psychotic, murderous uncle, who's like, you have to make me profits. And here he's seeing these spice harvesting activities not going well.
Yeah.
Now, looking at this big display of the planet, he says, I only see half the planet. Like, what the fuck? Shit's not going right. He's stressed. And the Harkonnen Guard, this movie has a series of Harkonnen Guards who make bad decisions about when to talk and why. Because this one's like, you should maybe take a nap, sir. And Raban's like, I hear your suggestion. I'm going to smash your head to pulp on this computer terminal, like on this command terminal.
Yikes. Right.
And devolves into screaming only the way Dave Bautista can, into
so good.
Kill them all, kill the rats, you know?
Yeah.
So good. So visceral. Very, very cool.
Yeah. Really great acting here from Dave Bautista as well. And man, to be a middle manager in a Harkonnen corporation must be simply the most dangerous job. All it takes is one wrong word, one wrong look, and your brains are going to be fucking splattered all over that console. Tough look for our guy.
Yeah, very true.
I also wanted to add very quickly about this scene. I love the visuals here. I'm going to gush about the visuals a lot throughout this discussion. I loved this holographic like display of the planet and this overview of Harkonnen troop movements. Something about like a big, cool 3D hologram just scratches this nerdy itch in my brain. I love it.
Yeah.
It's a big reason I love the Blade Runner aesthetic as well, another movie by Denis. And I was very happy to see it here.
Yeah. Also,
love the sci-fi of it all.
Very RTS. Like, I could see this being the overmap for the 2025 remake of Dune 2 from 1992.
Completely. Now, moving on from that scene, we are back with Paul and the Fremen as they arrive somewhere called Sietch Tabr. Have you ever heard of this, Leo? Just a little place in the desert.
No, never met her. Yeah. Who's she?
Who's she indeed? My God, Sietch Tabr.
It looks so good
on screen. Oh, it looks so good. And of course, as they're approaching the entrance, Stilgar's performing some like bird-like calls and signals to his fellow Fremen to let them know that friendlies are approaching and don't attack. So security, as we can see, is very tight.
Right.
Now, once they enter Sietch Tabr proper, we see that the interior of this sietch is absolutely beautiful. Props to Patrice Vermette, who we had on the show recently, and the entire rest of the production team for putting together such an incredible set for Sietch Tabr. The walls are like covered in this like endless Fremen writing, and later in the film we even see a section of the wall with this big Fremen mural on it with someone riding a worm. Gorgeous stuff. I loved seeing this depiction of Sietch Tabr.
Yeah.
I have always, in every read through of Dune, had a very difficult time picturing what the sietch looks like on the inside. Is it more cave-like? Is it actually built in some sort of way? And I love now that I have at least a baseline to work off of. And I love the direction they took with the visuals here for a siege, because it's that perfect balance of rough enough to be out in the desert and to fit this culture, but also sophisticated enough to show us that the Fremen aren't like quote unquote desert rats or desert barbarians. They are a civilized people.
Totally. Yeah. I always thought sietches were like dim and like, they're sealed off from the outside elements because they have to keep the moisture in. And I think generally they're described as being lit almost primarily by glow globes.
Right.
But I also completely understand that would not look great on the silver screen. And genuinely, the number of like beautiful natural light like cascading into this space, the sets in the sietch are some of the most beautiful in the movie. So I'm very, very happy with this change. I do hope that in the third movie we see another sietch and that it looks distinct, because I think that would be a huge help in understanding that the Fremen are not monolithical, right?
Yeah.
That
I love that. I absolutely agree. Well, while the siege might be beautiful, the reaction that Paul and Jessica get as outsiders walking into this siege, less so. There's all of these people gathered, and we see a lot of hostility toward Paul. But among the hostile cries in the Fremen crowd, we do also get little whispers of Lisan al Gaib and Mahdi. So even now, at the very first moment Paul walks in, there are some true believers, and they're already starting to believe, and we'll continue to see that belief grow and grow and grow over the course of this film.
Yeah. Now, with Paul and Jessica at Sietch Tabr, Stilgar approaches the elders of the Sietch, literally asking them for advice. He's like, yo, I got these fucking outsiders. What do I do with them? And this group of old folks is like, the normal thing, get rid of them? Like, kick them out.
Right.
Why are you confused?
Yeah.
Now, he insists. He's like, no. This time I've seen the signs. This might be the Lisan al Gaib. And one of them immediately is like, oh, again, you've seen the signs. Which tells us so fucking much about Stilgar. Like, that one response, someone going, again, tells us that he has multiple times in his life been like, oh, this might be it. We might be there. And
Yes.
that is huge. I mean, again, I don't know that I ever got a strong sense from the book that he is the sort of person to be easily whipped up into a believing frenzy, but it feels appropriate and begins to differentiate the generational and the locations of the Fremen, where the Stilgar as a southern Fremen is much more likely to believe. And then maybe some of these elders are northern Fremen who are skeptical of his beliefs. Right.
Totally. And even if they do believe in the prophecy,
Right.
who's to say that these outsiders are exactly the ones, right?
Right.
Especially if Stilgar has come to them before believing he's found the ones. So I think they're warranted in their skepticism.
Totally.
But I agree. Like in the book, I didn't get quite the sense that Stilgar was such a fanatic. He certainly was a believer in the book.
Yeah.
And always has been. There's no doubt about that. But I think this movie played up his fanaticism in a smart way to show us the contrast between the skeptics, like the elders here or Chani and Shishakli later, versus the fundamentalists who truly believe in what they're doing.
Right. Yeah, that's very true.
All right. Well, in the next scene, we join Paul and Jessica in what is presumably like the Sietch Tabr cafeteria or something. It's a really beautiful set, frankly. But they are sort of sitting off by themselves, obviously, as the off-worlders. And the two are discussing what the heck to do next. How are we going to survive? And Paul is strategizing with Jessica. He's basically saying, okay, well, I mean, I guess we need to convince the non-believers, right? Like, I need to avenge my father. We need to move against the Harkonnens,
Right.
and we
Yeah.
need to move against the Emperor. And the way to do that is to cultivate desert power like my father had wanted. So
Right.
let's convince the people who don't believe in us to believe in us so that they will work with us. And Jessica tries to remind him. She's like, hey, well, okay, you're moving a bit fast, kiddo. Your father didn't believe in revenge, right? Your father wouldn't want your sole motivation here to be bloodlust and revenge for his death. And Paul, kind of showing us the darkness that's to come later in the film, snaps back at her. And he says, okay, well, I do.
Yeah.
I do fucking believe in revenge. And this really reminds me of how in the book there's this strong emphasis that Paul is more like his grandfather than he is like his father. His grandfather was the more brutal and tactical and cunning of the Atreides. Leto, obviously more level-headed, more kind-hearted. Some might say softer. The Emperor himself might say weaker.
Yeah.
Paul, of course, is not exactly like his father in that way.
Yeah.
And at this moment in time is seeking revenge. The pain of losing his whole family, his friends, Duncan Idaho, Thufir Hawat, his dad. It's still with Paul.
Yeah. It also kind of continues to set the stage for the Paul and Jessica are Harkonnen like reveal. And
Yeah.
Paul,
Believe in revenge.
toward the end, right, he says, then I will be Harkonnen to win. And that feeling of I'm going to embrace the darkest impulses because that's how we get out of here. We start to see those embers glowing now that will become raging fires later.
Totally.
Now, Paul's meal is going interestingly as he eats. And Shishakli, a Fremen woman who this movie establishes as Chani's close friend and confidant, jokes that the food is, quote, too spicy for the off-worlder, which is very funny. I mean, a joke about a white boy in like a desert community, the food being too spicy.
Love it.
Spectacular. I'll also point out here, Shishakli is a character from Dune, but is a fella and who basically only appears 4 times across 5 pages and is actually the one who lends Paul the maker hooks for Paul's first worm ride, which is very cool.
Right. Yeah. There's also another funny moment here in the cafeteria where someone else kind of looking at Paul, admiring the looks, right? Timmy Chalamet, that jawline.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And this person makes a comment that, this white boy, though, he'd look really pretty with blue eyes, right? Like, I'm sinking into his brown eyes right now, but imagine.
Yeah.
See blue eyes of the Abad, baby.
Yeah.
Which I found funny.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we're all thirsting after Timothy Chalamet. So, of course, the Fremen would as well.
I mean, constantly. And then the last note about this spicy food, it is causing Paul to get more visions. And he sees a vision of his father's skull at a shrine. And, I think we'll talk more about this in the second part, but Paul's visions do have a kind of fun arc where at the beginning of this movie, they are very like, there's lots of light leak, there's lots of like lens flares, it's all very obscured. And then later on, he's seeing like straight up visions of just, oh, that's going to happen. Okay.
Yeah, totally. Well, in the very next scene, we are then at the cistern with Stilgar and Jessica. And we witness basically the harvesting of the Jameis juice, as we affectionately like to call it.
Yeah.
Jameis is placed within a death still,
Uh-huh.
and the water from his body is drawn out and put in this enormous body of water in a cistern under Sietch Tabr,
Right.
where the Fremen have been collecting for generations. One little detail from this scene that we did want to call out, though, is the death still itself. Again, just talking like book lore versus the way the movie depicted it. In the books and in the encyclopedia, death stills are explained as some sort of like baking process where like the body is like sort of heated and the evaporated moisture from the body is captured. Here we kind of see that Jameis's eyes and mouths are covered with wax, and he's placed inside this like vacuum sealed bag, and then the water is reclaimed via some sort of like pressure system. We see the tubes of water coming out from this bag and presumably out from his body, and then these tubes are attached to little water packs, which are then later poured out into the cistern.
Right.
So just a little bit of a difference in how they visualized the death still, but its purpose is still exactly the same. Body from water, take out.
Right. And this is where Stilgar delivers basically exactly from the book, his 1-2 punch. We have 38 million decaliters of water. And a Fremen dying of thirst wouldn't touch any of it. Would just die of thirst rather than drink this water. Because this is for our dream. I also will point out, we get later the wind traps that collect water, but at this stage, we haven't gotten any sense of how else Fremen gather water. So it kind of seems like implied that this cistern, or Jessica believes this cistern, is 100% people water. And that I don't think works logistically. So I don't know. A little strange. I kind of would have preferred reference to wind traps or dew collectors before this moment.
I think it's actually more impactful for her to think this is all dead Fremen, though, because it's a way to illustrate the sacrifice, right? It's this enormous room that we can't even see the other end of.
True. Yeah.
And it's full of water. And then you imagine, okay, the water that just came out of Jameis's body added to this pool of water. How many fucking bodies must it have taken to fill this much? And so I think it is an impactful line from her to say so many souls, because it tells us that the Fremen have been at this for a long, long time, and many countless Fremen have died for this cause.
Yeah,
And
true.
that's how much they believe in this cause. So, I mean, like, yeah, we could nitpick the logistics of like, where did this water come from, wind traps, and blah, blah, blah. But I think as an emotional delivery,
Yeah.
it hits as intended.
The one other depth and dimension to that, which I would pick as a nit, is that knowing that the Fremen have gotten the water from bodies, but also from technology and also from ingenious understanding of the planet and things like that, that deepens the Fremen's technological savvy versus,
Right.
oh yeah, we just vacuum seal bodies and dump their water into this big old tank. But you're totally right. Emotionally, it's super impactful, and it does a very good job of kind of setting up the sincerity and the kind of the deep belief. Like, no matter how skeptical some of the Fremen are, this amount of water is still here. And even the skeptical Fremen, I get the sense, would not drink this water.
Oh, never. Yeah. That feels like a holy line that even the most ardent atheist Fremen would not cross, walking into the cistern and taking a bath. You know?
Was it like Kung Fu Panda where he's washing his armpits in the sacred pool? Anyway.
I've never seen that.
Oh, Jabu.
Another one. Add it to the list.
Add it to the list. I'll also point out Stilgar here on ceremony, he takes his thumb and like gathers her tear and then drinks it.
Licks it. Or yeah, like
yeah. Fully turned on. That was wow. The temperature in the theater spiked 15 degrees.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
Okay, yeah, it wasn't just me. Good to know. After he does turn Jessica on, though, Stilgar gets to business because he has a proposal for Jessica. He says, "Hey, our Reverend Mother is dying, and you are a Bene Gesserit. Do you want to be our Reverend Mother?" But he's also kind of giving her a proposal she can't refuse,
right?
Because if she doesn't go through with this,
yeah,
then there's really no reason to keep her around. And if it turns out that Paul is actually not the Lisan al-Gaib and gets killed in his training or something, then Jessica's going to get killed too. Like, then there's just no prophecy. There's no reason to keep her around. So there is sort of a survival reason for Jessica to accept this proposal. It's the only way that she and Paul are going to be accepted in this siege in some way and not immediately get killed.
Yeah, exactly. I'll point out here in the book, I actually really liked the scene in the book, right? Like,
yeah,
Jessica, this is a moment where Stilgar approaches her and he asks her, like, he kind of tests her gently to see if she knows legend and if she like knows the ways of the Fremen and blah, blah, blah. And she calls upon the demanding memory called Adab to basically recite this long call and response prayer or like, thing. And it basically convinces him, oh no, she's already at the level of Sayadina or like Reverend Mother in training. So that's an easy enough step. Cool. Done. And that moment not only shows a very cool power of the Bene Gesserit, I think the demanding memory, Adab, is like super, super interesting.
Yeah.
It also shows Jessica's ingenuity, her abilities to like understand her tools and use them in the right way. It also shows that she is actively manipulating them and she's not being like talked into it, right?
Right.
He's going, become a Reverend Mother. And she goes, oh, what if I don't? And he goes, then you die. Is not giving her the agency that she had in the moment of deciding, okay, here we go. I'm going to lean in to the Missionaria Protectiva in a way that just feels different. And I get it. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder how you translate that, though, right?
Yeah.
In the book, you can say, and then she reached into her memory of the Adab and recognized the prophecy and knew just the words to say.
Yeah.
In this scene, in like a visual medium of a movie, how do you capture all of that in just a couple lines of dialogue without like other exposition to explain all of that or something,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand the need to simplify it because it is a very complex thing and something that can only be delivered in that way in a book because we can be inside Jessica's head. We can't be inside her head in the movie. So much more difficult to get a concept like Adab memory and using a prophecy from 1,000 years ago in a way to manipulate Stilgar.
Yeah, that's true. It's a different medium, requires different things.
Yeah.
I you know
Yeah, I agree that
yeah,
the nuance is lovely, and it's much more cooler in the book to see Jessica manipulate Stilgar here.
yeah,
I mean, that's why books are awesome, right? You can get that nuance
yeah,
that just
true.
took us like 5 minutes to explain in 2 paragraphs.
Yeah, true.
But a movie is a different medium, and like it's not going to take you 2 paragraphs or a couple lines of dialogue in a movie to get that across. It's going to take you multiple scenes to get to that level of depth. So it's tough. You gotta. There's always going to be some loss in translation from medium to medium.
Yeah, it's very true.
Well, this feels like a good place to take a breather, Leah. We've already gone so deep into this film, and we've barely made a dent. There's much more to talk about, but let's take a short break. Don't go anywhere, dear listener. When we come back, we will continue in our scene by scene breakdown and analysis of this movie. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back, everybody. Oh, I hope you're ready to drink some poison, some worm piss. Let's get into it. So it's settled. Jessica is going to become a Reverend Mother, and she's talking to Paul about this. Paul's like, "Why are you being weird about it? What an honor. You get to be a Reverend Mother? Hell yeah. Fuck yeah, up top, leaving me hanging. Okay, she's not gonna, she's got cold feet. Interesting."
Yeah.
But as part of this, he asks her a very interesting lore question. Quote, "How does someone become a Reverend Mother?" End quote. And Jessica explains, quote, "It's different on every planet. On Arrakis, I have no idea." End quote. Very interesting. Bene Gesserit train and train and train. They learn poison transmutation. They learn the prana bendu. They go through literally a decade of the most specialized training in the universe. And then they have the spice agony. And they have this basically what evolved from tradition as a brush with death. They get very, very close to dying.
Yeah.
And in that moment, that is sort of what triggers the Reverend Mother awareness, the ancestral memory to awaken.
Yeah.
And actually, historically, there are something called wild Reverend Mothers, which is just women who have awoken those abilities away from Bene Gesserit teachings, which is very interesting.
Right.
And historically, the water of life becomes one of the most reliable ways of doing this, probably because it is sort of a known poison and they can maybe pass down the specific methods of surviving the spice agony. But the fact that Jessica doesn't know about this and is just like, I don't know what's about to happen is super interesting and continues to play this dichotomy of what do people know and what don't people know. And having characters in this universe with an incomplete understanding of the universe is so refreshing. You don't have to have everyone know everything all the time. It's fun for Jessica to go, I'm scared because I've got no fucking clue what's about to happen.
Right.
Probably going to be very close to killing me. And when Paul asks, "Oh, is it dangerous?" she responds, "It's lethal for a man." And he has this little like defiant like whatever.
Yeah.
But yes, very cool to see some like Bene Gesserit lore building happening in the movie.
Right. Right. She knows enough to be scared, but she doesn't know exactly the process. And as she says, it's different from planet to planet. It's the agony nonetheless, but how it happens and how to overcome it might be different from culture to culture. Now, the Water of Life ceremony itself is actually a small affair in this film. It's just Romallo and Stilgar and Jessica and some assistants in a cozy little cave together. This, of course, is a huge difference from the literal spice orgy. That's right, I said the word orgy.
Yeah.
That takes place during the Water of Life ceremony. It's this whole affair where the whole Sietch is gathered together to witness Jessica ascend to Reverend motherhood. Now, the reason to sort of simplify this appears to basically just kind of come down to pacing, similar to a whole funeral scene with Jamis. There probably wasn't time to also have a whole spice orgy scene with an entire ceremony
Right.
for Jessica to just drink this water and become the Reverend mother. We got to keep things moving here. So not a huge change in my opinion. Would it have been nice to see some Fremen making love on screen? Sure, I'm always down for that, baby.
Yeah.
But also, if there's not time, there's not time, and the end result's the same. She takes the water of life and undergoes the changes.
Indeed. I always pictured the scene from Matrix, right? Where
Absolutely. Yeah.
the slow motion partying as everyone gets high on shit.
100%. Right. Orpheus with his chest out, baby.
He's like, full nips. Let's go, dude. I do think that the spice orgy, because again, in lore based, it establishes how the Fremen have a sort of collective consciousness, right? The Tao of the Fremen.
Yeah.
Because they share in these things. And I think they did draw on that for this movie. I was going to point out in some of the fight scenes, you see Fremen tag team individual fighters where they are all in a skirmish, but they are still aware of each other and how they're moving.
Right.
It's super cool. And there's lots of little details there. It's fine. I understand, again, why they're not doing a full orgy in this Warner Brothers picture.
Yeah, totally.
Now, outside of the cave, where Jessica's shitting herself, Paul is watching the mouth of the cave anxiously. He looks over, he sees some older Fremen who are reverent and attentive. They clearly believe in this whole ceremony and everything it implies. The younger Fremen are all laughs and jokes. They're talking, they're being, distracting. And he walks over and says, quote, "What are you guys laughing about?" End quote. Being the coolest dude in middle school. Classic cool guy move. Hey, you guys are laughing. I want to laugh too. What are you talking? And this leads into a super interesting exchange, right? Shishakli makes a joke about his mother drinking worm piss, which, of course, the young Fremen all laugh at. Johnny is like,
yeah,
yo, that's not funny. He's about to lose his mother. Be sensitive. And Shishakli doubles down. She's like, fuck that. She has no sympathy for, quote, anybody stupid enough to drink poison, end quote. These younger Fremen do not believe in pretty much any supernatural quality stuff. They're just like, baby with the bathwater. It's all, it's just bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Paul calls them out. He's like, you don't believe in any of it?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no, that's the Southern Fremen. The Southern Fremen, they're all superstitious. It's crazy. We're Northern Fremen. We're Gen Z. We don't give a fuck about anything.
Right. We live north of the Mason-Dixon.
Yeah. We're never going to own property. We have so much student debt. This is terrible. We don't give a fuck about your millennial prophecies.
Right. Do you know how to Dougie? Because if you don't,
I can teach you.
I can teach you right now.
I can teach you right now. Teach you how to Dougie. Teach you. Now, Stilgar comes out, millennial, and says it's time to pray. Typical millennial.
Boo. Damn, flashbacks to my parents growing up.
Okay, yeah, maybe
every single day.
Maybe boomers. And the ceremony is now officially underway, right? He's left, the nabe is gone, so it's just the ladies. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And Chani tells Paul that Stilgar, quote, is from the south, and then there's a joke about him having an accent. Oh, you couldn't hear his accent?
That's Southern twang.
That's Southern twang. Yeah, whenever he speaks Fremen, he's like, well, howdy, folks. Paul's like, what a distinguished, respectable man. Well, I think he's a shot.
Amazing. Wow, there's so many potential bits there with Southern Stilgar, but we'll let him slide. We'll save him for later.
We are slowly but surely making every character Southern. It began with Gaius Helen, and has only migrated from there.
Right. No character is safe. We'll do bad Southern accents for all of you, goddammit. No, I really love this change overall.
Yeah.
I like this divide between the young and the old. I like this divide between the North and the South because it simplifies the dense messages of this movie in a way that you can compress into a 2-hour, 45-minute movie and in a way where someone who's never read the book and was dragged to this film by their nerdy-ass friend will still understand. The Fremen are more than just the one-note homogenous characters that they are in the first book. I realize in the sequels they get a little more fleshed out, and that's great. But frankly, in the first book, Jamis is maybe the only one that ever is like, no, fuck this Paul kid. Everyone else seemingly falls in line very, very quickly. So having these different groups from different regions and different ages question the prophecy adds this layer of dimension to the Fremen people, but also helps the movie properly like convey the nature of the prophecy, right? In the book, it is easy to read it your first time and think the prophecy is a real thing, that there is actually a savior. But in the movie, Denny handled it exactly correctly in explaining that, no, this is manipulation by the Bene Gesserit. And so, of course, there are people who are going to be skeptical. And they might be a minority, and they might be just the younger crowd, but they're still skeptical. And they keep repeating things like, Arrakis should be saved by one of its own, which I loved.
Yeah, totally.
Why should an outsider, why should a colonizer come in and quote unquote save the indigenous people? We are capable of saving ourselves, goddammit. And that's such a beautiful message. Of course, this culture is primed and ready to accept a prophet thanks to many, many generations of manipulation. But to have characters in this movie question it nonetheless, I think is a very strong choice. And I really liked it.
Totally. And you're right that there's like more nuance given later in the books, but I think establishing it now gives us a very helpful insight into either things that will happen or even just, bring the nuance in now. Like it's not detrimental to know that people are not a monolith.
Yeah.
Now, back inside, Jessica's ceremony begins as she is reciting the Litany Against Fear, again, shitting herself. And the water of life is brought forward. It's very beautiful. We saw this in the trailers. Beautiful little vessel. And she's like, oh shit, is that blue raspberry flavored? Oh no. Oh, I hate that flavor, She asks, what is it? Romallo ends up using the voice on Jessica. Drink. Which was very cool to see the powerful voice coming from this like withered woman.
Yeah.
To see her be able to command Jessica like that was pretty incredible.
Powerful stuff.
It also begins the trend of, we get a lot of the voice in this movie. But this one, I think, is 100% cool, and I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
Actually, I do like Jessica having agency and deciding to do the thing because she understands the necessity. And whenever a character uses voice in someone else, it's like, so that person just didn't get to choose.
Right.
And that could be something I would have a gripe with, actually.
Yes. Yeah, I had a gripe with it when Chani was compelled to use it as well.
Yes.
Later in the movie.
Right? Oh, that especially on a rewatch. That's it. We'll talk about it. we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Now, Jessica brings the lip of the ornate vessel to her lips. She drinks, and then after a few moments, she buckles and starts writhing on the ground. Romallo, loving it. Big ol' smile on her face, like, yeah, hell yeah. Presumably it's going well. I think that's an important moment for the audience. We see Romallo's like, this is what's supposed to happen. Not just like, if everyone just started panicking, we're like, oh shit, Jessica failed, right?
Mm-hmm.
This instead we know, oh, this is a process. And it's at this moment we start to get these internal shots of this like blue inky wave of the spice essence billowing into Jessica's internal universe, including over the fetus, the developing baby, Alia.
Yes.
And Alia's eyes open.
And they're blue.
And they're blue already. Wow. I mean, a lot of babies are born with blue eyes and then they darken, but
those demons.
Demons. But this is canonical. Like in Frank's books,
absolutely,
when a baby is in the body of a woman who goes through the spice agony, the baby becomes conscious in the womb.
Right.
Now, Romallo senses this happening and it's like, oh, fuck, we fucked up. Right? Like, what have we done? She's pregnant. And everyone in the room is unhappy with this news.
Totally. And Bene Gesserit, like her, would obviously understand the risk of abomination. And so she knows what she has done. She's created an abomination.
Right.
Either way, she does overcome it, which is great news for all of us, and specifically great news for Stilgar, who sees nothing but prophecy in this. We're back outside in the next scene as Jessica is resting post-agony. And the Fremen outside are in an argument. They are shouting at each other, the younger northern Fremen versus the older, more fundamentalist southern Fremen, because they don't know how to interpret what just went down. Was it a miracle? Was it a trick? What exactly is happening here?
Right.
And the young Fremen are very clear in their belief. The Lisan Gaib can't be an off-worlder, shouldn't be an off-worlder.
Right.
A Fremen has got to save the Fremen people, and they won't accept anyone else. Paul cuts in, and he's like, yo, I agree, gang. I agree. This wasn't any sort of miracle. This wasn't any sort of prophecy. What my mother did here is simple poison transmutation. It's a high-level skill that many Bene Gesserit are taught to do.
Right.
And my mother knew how to do it. It's not a miracle.
Right.
It's biology. It's training. It's science. And he makes it clear, I'm not here to be some sort of prophet. I'm not here to fulfill some Lisan al-Gaib legacy. I'm here to learn your ways. I want to fight alongside you. I want to learn your culture, and I want you to teach me everything you know. He's being very upfront and direct with them in this way that I really appreciated and that I think really helped him win over the younger Fremen. Stilgar and his ilk already revere him. The younger Fremen who are skeptical need this like very realistic approach from Paul. This very direct, honest, and even humble approach for him to say, guys, I'm just here to learn. I want you to teach me. You're the experts here. Of course, Stilgar kind of interprets this in a prophetic way once again, because we get a humorous little cut of him talking to his friends
Yeah.
about how humble this Mahdi is.
Yeah.
This only proves that he's the chosen one even more, because of course, the chosen one would never brag about being the chosen one.
Yeah.
Humorous little moment. I saw some chatter online about people not liking how silly, quote unquote, Stilgar gets throughout this movie. And they think like his fanaticism and his humorous moments are taken too far and they diminish from like the very wise and grounded Nabe that we know from the books. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that take. I can understand it, but I quite enjoyed the humorous moments, and Stilgar is clearly still well respected. All throughout this movie, none of the younger Fremen dare ever actually stand against Stilgar.
Right.
They'll voice a dissenting opinion, but do any of them fucking stand up and grab their knife? No, they never would.
And that does seem to be the way that Fremen culture is, right? You are kind of encouraged to push and to talk and it's only at the Cave of Birds where there are these restrictions on who can talk and why. And even then, shouting out disparaging remarks doesn't really get you in that much trouble. So they do seem to be a culture that encourages that sort of push and pull.
Yeah, completely. Any Fremen is free to express their thoughts, right? They would never hold back in that way in their culture. But that doesn't mean they don't respect Stilgar as their Nabe and their leader. So as humorous and old-fashioned and okay boomer that he might be, I don't think it takes away from his character.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Also, in the theater last night, everyone laughed. It was like a very good moment. And I think in a movie that has as much action as it has and as much, complicated stuff, it's good to have moments that are just funny and entertaining. It's still a movie.
Totally.
You still have to justify people being in the seats,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, when Jessica wakes up, shit gets a whole lot weirder. And this is where some of Villeneuve's bolder choices start to have life. And specifically, she tells Paul, oh, Alia is talking to me. And she was afraid, but she's okay now. Which Paul takes way better than he should. If, my mother was like, so I'm pregnant and the baby's talking to me, I'd be like, I need to sit down. That's a lot to process.
Yeah.
And Jessica literally urges Paul to do what she does. She's like, I've been talking with Alia. And you need to do what I did. You need to drink the water of life. Your mind will open. Your full powers will be realized. You'll become the Kwisatz Haderach. You've only got one step left. That's all you need. That's all you need to do. And this is a wild departure from the book, right? In the book, Paul is pushed to do the water of life ceremony, but on his own as kind of a renegade moment. He chooses to do it, doesn't tell anybody. He's found in a coma, and Jessica's like, I can tell he's alive, but I've got no fucking clue what he did and why he did it. It's literally Chani who shows up and is like, Jessica, you should know your own son. Of course he did the water of life. And Jessica's like, holy shit, are you kidding me? There was something really gratifying about Chani being the one to understand Paul well enough to immediately diagnose what he had done.
Yeah.
And not it just being Jessica going, Paul, you should drink it. Go.
Right.
Do it.
Right.
It's fine. This is much faster. This is much more effective. And in the grand scheme of things, this is still in line with what the Bene Gesserit want. They want a potential Kwisatz Haderach to awaken because they have ideas of what that's going to do for their sisterhood.
Yeah.
But still, I kind of liked how it was in the book. It's just a different way of approaching the same story, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't think a book Jessica would have risked her son's life in the Spice Agony with the water of life.
Yeah.
Because she went through it herself and knows the risks, especially for a man.
Yeah, totally.
No man has ever survived that. So
not one. Yeah.
I mean, as much as she believes in her son's abilities and believes that she has produced the Kwisatz Haderach, book Jessica never so overtly pushes him to take that step. That's a step that out of desperation in the book, he chooses himself. And this is a big change for Jessica / Alia to be pushing Paul to do this throughout the whole movie over and over again.
Yeah. This is a moment also I want to revisit because I feel as though she says, I can't remember if the you should drink the water of life is something she is saying based on her experience, or if it's something that Alia is insisting. And if it's Alia insisting it, it may be because Alia is prescient and has future sight.
Right.
So
is seeing the future.
That
already.
would also be a very big difference, but it would also justify why Jessica, who loves her son, would suggest he do something that, by all accounts, is lethal, literally.
Right.
I also want to nitpick here. She's like, you've only got one step left. All you have to do is do this.
Yeah.
Is he ready? I feel like at this stage, if he tried the water of life, he'd just fucking die. I don't think he knows how to nullify poison at all. So he doesn't have the way. And granted, he might not even have that necessarily by the time he does the water of life ceremony himself. Yeah. But at least then he has the eyes of a bat. He's clearly acclimated to spice. It's in his system. It's not as much of a shock. I don't know. Canonically, I think he would just die.
Right.
So
timing is everything.
Picking that nit. But again, maybe Alia knows better than me, and maybe he actually could have just become the Kwisatz Haderach now, and it would have been fine. Who knows?
Yeah. Are you claiming to be smarter than an prescient abomination embryo? Because I'm going to wager you're not. My money's on the embryo.
That's a much longer title than Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? New from NBC. Are you smarter than a prescient, unborn abomination embryo? And then it's like, what are the ultimate levers to control humanity? And the contestant's like, fucking what?
What am I going to have for lunch tomorrow?
That's what?
What?
I'm getting pizza? What? Wrong. Fuck.
Okay, back to the movie.
Yeah.
In the next scene, Paul's Fremen training officially begins. And his very first lesson is to cross this long stretch of desert and then come back all on his own. Test number 1, baby. Survive out there. Can you do it? Any Fremen child probably could. Stilgart does offer some advice.
Yeah.
For the outsider. He doesn't want Paul to completely fail out there. He says stuff like, watch out for the scorpions and the centipedes. Not the big ones are harmless. The small ones, they're the deadly ones.
Trapdoor spiders.
In addition to the genuine advice, he also offers some superstitious advice that is very much in line with this fundamentalist character that we know in the book. He says, beware of the jinn of the desert. don't listen to them. And it does lead to another humorous moment with Stilgar and Javier Bardem doing some really fun acting, where he's just kind of joking and messing around with Paul, but then also being like, no, but really though, if they're Argent, don't listen to them. Meanwhile, Shishakli and Chani are nearby, watching this all go down, and of course they're still skeptical of this outsider. Shishakli turns to Chani and she's like, I mean, what do you think? Like, this is not, he's going to die out there. And Chani looks concerned. We're starting to see that she is reconsidering her view of Paul a little bit. And she even says to her friend Shishakli, he's different than other strangers. He's not like the other outsiders I've come across. And that sort of reminded us of what Dr. Kynes in the book says about Duke Leto, right? I love this, or what is it? I like this Duke. Dr. Kynes very skeptical of the great houses that have come and gone to Arrakis before, suddenly admires Duke Leto's actions in the first book.
Mm.
And Chani's having a similar transformation about Paul here as well.
Very true. So jumping forward, we see Paul in the desert. He's attempting this crossing. And when he spots a mysterious silhouette atop a dune, he assumes it's Jameis.
Yeah.
I think clearly either Stilgar's warning about like desert spirits and demons has prepped him for like the supernatural, or reminder, with his spice diet, Paul is probably seeing visions that are indistinguishable from reality sometimes. So this could just be him being confused by like, is this a prescient vision or is this real? I'm not sure.
Right. I liked that blending of reality and visions.
Yeah, I think so.
It shows us that his view of the world is muddled in that way, much like it is in the book.
Yeah. And also not under his full control yet, right? Like
totally.
After the Water of Life, he is like, I can do this now. I've got this power. Right now, it still kind of comes upon him in opportune moments, like when he's out in the desert. Now, it's not Jameis, it's Chani. Even better. She's here to help. And she tells him, you're walking like a drunk lizard. And also, why are you sand walking? There's no worms here. And she punches the dune to demonstrate. Now, he has a funny moment where he goes, oh, that's interesting as you're showing me how to sand walk properly. Because in the film books, and she just stares him down. And he's, sorry, continue. Delightful.
So good.
So cute.
So rom-com.
It's so rom-com. This is really two young people getting to know each other. And then we get a mini montage of them getting to know each other.
That's right.
She's teaching him about the wind traps and how often they have to change the filters and these things he needs to know in order to be a habitant.
Yeah, he's learning.
Desert, right?
And we're getting a sense that time is passing as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, immediately after this lovely little montage, we pivot, baby.
Yeah,
the tone screeches to a halt and takes a left turn, because next we're with Jessica in the Sietch, looking so evil.
Oh,
My
so
God,
evil.
Rebecca Ferguson is serving in this movie.
Yes, you're true.
# Reverend Mommy. She is scheming with embryo Alia, because at this point, mother and daughter are just fully communicating in full sentences back and forth. And the goal is to convince the non-believers that Paul is their savior. That is how Jessica believes she will be able to protect her son and protect herself among these Fremen people and among this unknown culture they have found themselves in. She literally has this line in this scene about targeting the weakest of the Fremen first, to convert them first. And the camera just like is real tight on her face, and we just hang there for like 10 seconds too long, and it's so uncomfortable and evil, and ooh, it's good. So good.
Yeah. It's so...
And I wanted to take this opportunity to point out that so many people, myself included, complained that in part 1, Jessica was so un-Bene Gesserit-like. She was so weepy and so emotional. Every scene Rebecca Ferguson got in that first movie was just like concerned mother, crying mother, concerned wife / concubine. And we got very few instances of her being a badass Bene Gesserit. We certainly got them. She took down Stilgar. She took down the Harkonnen guards in the Ornithopter. but a vast majority of her scenes were very emotional. And people had issue with that in the first book. I myself had some issue with that as well, because it felt so un-Bene Gesserit of her. But here we fucking go, folks. This is full-on Reverend Mother Jessica scheming and plotting and pulling the strings from the shadows among these Fremen.
Yeah.
We see a Bene Gesserit at the top of her game in this film.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
100%. Gone is the woman from the first movie. She is truly transformed with this awakening, and it's a night and day difference.
Right.
And she looks feral. Like, she looks like a predator hunting, basically. And it's almost villainous at times. And in the first book, there's a line, "She is my enemy," and Paul recognizes that he is now opposed to his mother's objectives.
Right.
She is like, let's go, full jihad, full whatever, let's go, let's do it.
Yeah, do what must be done.
Yeah. And Villeneuve, the score, the scenes, the writing, the everything is giving us those flags
completely.
Now, the next scene is probably one of the most fun scenes in the movie.
Love it.
And this is a sort of early raid for Paul, it seems, on a Harkonnen spice harvester factory, which is harvesting some spice. The scene opens also with the cutest Muad'Dib mouse hopping along and finds a sand snorkel. Oh my gosh, cool piece of Fremen tech. And is, you can even hear Paul a little bit like, oh, go away. Like, leave me alone. As it's like digging in the sand. Very cute. And they begin this ambush, right? As the harvester factory gets close, Fremen materialize out of the sand at a full sprint, knife some dudes, take them down.
Right.
There is an ornithopter gunship. It is decimating. It is so powerful. It takes out, mows down some fighters very quickly. And I think we don't really get that as much in this movie of like an acknowledgement of how many Fremen die. We see quite a few Fremen fighters go down, but then later it's all kind of party and celebration. So these are like understood costs and risks, right?
Yeah.
And there's this great tense moment where the Fremen duck underneath the harvester factory itself, right? Kind of commando crawling at this crazy clip to avoid being squashed to the other side so that they can take out those people. Now, as someone who has recently learned how to fly an ornithopter in Microsoft Flight Simulator, if I was shooting at someone and then had to go to the other side of something, it would take me 45 minutes and 3 resets. So makes perfect sense why they pulled this maneuver. That's great.
Yeah. It's so cool. And look, we still got to take care of this ornithopter problem. Right. And that responsibility in this scene falls to Paul and Chani, who peel off from the rest of the group to attempt to rocket launcher this fucking ornithopter down.
Yeah.
They basically crouch behind one of the harvester's legs, and Paul loads up a rocket and has to kill one of the Harkonnens in their way. And this whole sequence is just so cool. Yeah. I mean, Chani fires the rocket point blank at a guy who comes up behind her that Paul wasn't able to take down.
Yeah.
Amazing, like such an anime moment for him to just get blown into the treads of the harvester.
Yeah, and she's like,
and absolutely
reload. It's like, Jesus.
Yeah, pure focus. I remember jotting down in my notes, fucking reload in all caps in that moment. Just pure adrenaline. And the problem that they're running into, basically, is the shields are still up for the ornithopter, and the shields only come down when that big machine gun that's been mowing down the Fremen is able to fire. Right. So Paul has a plan. He's going to run out and draw their fire. That'll lower their shields, and thus Chani can shoot. Unfortunately, his plan immediately goes awry because as soon as he runs out, the other arm that he's about to go take cover in lifts up and moves. And he's just like,
shit,
fuck.
Yeah.
And it's obviously something the Fremen far away in the hectic noise of this battle would never have heard. Right. To them, all they witnessed was Paul running out into the open and dodging bullets left and right like Neo.
Right.
But seemingly it is just luck or bad aim that none of those bullets actually mowed him down. And it does ultimately provide Chani the opening she needs to fire the rocket. We get another beautiful visual of an explosion inside of a shield kind of being compressed, the shield kind of becoming the thing that then ultimately blows the ornithopter to bits. And then after that, she runs over to Paul, and we get a really striking shot with the two of them running across the screen while the heaping metal scraps of the ornithopter crash down behind them. Very beautiful stuff. And again, I've said it before and I'll say it 1,000 times. The visuals of this movie stopped me in my tracks many times, and this was one of them.
Totally. Yeah.
And then, of course, with the ornithopter and the defenses of this harvest factory gone, the Fremen are free to laser gun the shit out of it and destroy one more Harkonnen spice harvester in this war against the Harkonnen.
Yeah. I'll also point out, we really just see the destructive power of laser guns here.
I know.
Like,
so cool.
This massive machine, it punches through it, straight up slicing through this massive piece of machinery.
Yeah.
It's really incredible how destructive they are.
Yep.
Now, the raid clearly was a huge success. So we have a big communal Fremen tent cheering and partying. Everyone's drinking and having a great time.
Snacking on some desert jerky or something.
I didn't get that.
Siri didn't get that. She's like, what is desert jerky? Yeah. Snacking on Slim Jims. They've got those, the like meat sticks. And clearly drunk Stilgar is like, Paul, he moved. He saw that she was he's safety. He foresaw, he has the vision. He can see. And he's just in the Gatorade. He is like fully Team Paul at this moment.
Oh yeah. He drank the Kool-Aid, baby.
Now, Chani asks Paul, where'd you learn to fight like that? And Paul's like, my teachers, they're my best friends. They got slaughtered. Everyone's like, whoa, shit, man, that really puts a damper on the party. Come on, dude. But with the attention of the tent on him, he gives this incredible speech.
Yeah.
Really reeks of like the young revolutionary, right? He's like,
totally.
This isn't right. But listen, my family's been fighting them, the Harkonnens, for hundreds of years. You've been fighting them for decades, so I know them better than you. But you know the desert. You are of the desert. Together we can bury them. And Stilgar, trying to trick him into leading them, goes, what would you have us do? Suggest something. And Paul goes, what would you do, Stilgar? And Stilgar goes, well, I would go further north, I guess. And Paul goes, then I would go further north. Yeah.
I really like how he turns it back on Stilgar, right?
No hesitation.
Stilgar is trying to pass the torch here. He's like, oh, yes, Lisa, Gabe, lead us. Tell us what to do.
Yeah.
And Paul immediately flips it back on him. I really liked that touch.
Huge. Yeah. And also shows his savvy. I mean, this is the sort of thing that like Chani and Shishakli are really going to like. And I don't think he's doing it manipulatively. He's like really genuinely like, no, I don't want the reins. Stilgar, you're wise. What would you do?
Oh, yeah.
Now, Shishakli's like, if you go further north, you might die. And this is where he says like, yeah, I might die. And you might die. But the Fremen will succeed in the end, and it's like, oh shit. And I was, I almost jumped up and joined the cause. It's like,
oh yeah,
very inspiring.
That's revolutionary talk right there.
Yeah. And it works. Shishakli's like, bro, everybody, Paul should be a Fedaykin. He should be a literal warrior. He should have a Fremen name, Stilgar. What the fuck? Stilgar's like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh,
let's go.
Let's go.
So much chest thumping,
And he comes up with the name Usul. Very cool. Of course, straight from the book. Base of the book.
Straight from the book. I love it. One little detail that's neither here nor there, but I still want to call it out, that's a slight departure from the book in this scene, is actually the term Fedaykin. Because the movie seems to establish the Fedaykin are already some sort of advanced fighting force that exists either in Sietch Tabr or within the Fremen at large. But in the book, the Fedaykin are actually like Paul's personally trained SEAL Team 6, like believers of the Messiah.
Right. Yeah.
They are like the ardent believers who follow him the most. They were trained in the weirding way by him and Jessica, and they are like the most bloodthirsty Fremen fighters, at least within Sietch Tabr. They're like this hit squad.
Yeah.
Of Paul's specifically. So a bit of a change here, but regardless, at the end of the day, it's still used in a similar way, where it's clearly like a core group of respected fighters who've proven themselves.
Yeah. I tried to
out
kind
in
of
the desert.
fact check this as well, and I don't know about the prequel novels by Brian Herbert, so it's possible Fedaykin is established in the Fremen culture before. Paul refers to them as his Fedaykin over and over again, and
Totally.
naturally that could just be the Fedaykin assigned to him. But I think what is true is the term only comes up once Paul is a respected leader among the Fremen. So you're totally right. Like,
yes.
according to Frank's books, Fedaykin are associated with Paul versus, hey, I'm Fedaykin, you're Fedaykin. We should make him Fedaykin, Stilgar. It is a change. Now, Stilgar tells Paul, in addition to Usul, his name, he says, come over here. And still, cute moment, Paul looks at Chani. Chani's like, yeah, go on, champ.
Yeah.
Get your name.
Oh.
And Paul goes over, your name is Usul, but you need a battle name. You need a name that, like, people will call out to you in battle. This introduces the idea. In the book, we have Sietch names, which is like your private name that only people from your Sietch know you by. And then you have the name that, like, more generally is your calling card. I like that better than, like, we have your secret name and your battle name because you're a Fedaykin. So you have a Fremen name, but now you also have a battle name. I kind of like the idea of the Sietches having that sense of community of you are of Sietch Tabr. You literally have a name that no one else in the world knows, other than people in Sietch Tabr. But
like, this is what you're called at home within the Sietch, but also if you come across one of our own people out in the desert, this is how we can confirm we are of the same Sietch.
Exactly.
If I know your secret name, then I am also from your community.
It's functional. It makes sense in a world perforated with spies and intrigue and blah blah blah.
Absolutely.
But in any case, okay, so he has to choose a battle name, and he goes, what do you call the bounce, as if he hasn't fucking heard Muad'Dib like 30 times. What do you call the bouncing mouse? And initially everybody laughs. He kind of plays it to Shishakli, who was doing a bit earlier, maybe making fun of him because Muad'Dib found his sand snorkel and likes his smell. Came over to investigate.
Yeah.
But Stilgar shushes everyone. No. Listen, that's a really wise name because Muad'Dib, the mouse, makes his own water, right? We saw that in the first movie. Gathers it from his ears, condensation. He knows the ways of the desert. There's the constellation we call Muad'Dib that literally helps us navigate, leads us around. And we also know there's one of the two moons of Arrakis is Muad'Dib, the other one being the hand of God. So lots of imagery. He goes, that's a powerful name. That's a powerful name.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a sort of general murmuring of everyone going, wow, okay. And then Stilgar gives him his, you are Paul Muad'Dib, Usul Muad'Dib, and then gives him a big old ruckus bear hug.
Yeah.
And it's so cute. It's so fun.
Yeah.
And then this actually leads to a giant hug line where basically every Fremen congratulates Paul on his Fremen name and his Fedaykin name. And each person kind of gives him a, quick, big old hug and everything. And it's a touching moment in the ceremony. Very cool.
Right. Notably, he does hug Chani in this scene as well, but she is definitely a little more hesitant to hug him back. And whether that's because she can feel his giant boner in the still suit, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But what I am sure of is that she is uncomfortable with what is clearly the beginnings of his legend as the Lisan al-Gaib.
Yeah.
Of people starting to accept him. Even some of the more skeptical people, like Shishakli in this scene, starting to accept him as one of their own. And she even whispers in his ear. She says, Usul. But she doesn't say Muad'Dib. She doesn't say the more mystical and religiously charged name. She simply calls him by the simple Fremen name that he's been given.
Yeah.
I liked that. So I liked that little touch, planting the seed of the greater Chani rift to come.
Agreed.
Later in the movie.
Yeah. Also showing that she will continue to connect with him, not as the like fighter and Fremen Fedaykin, but as the offworlder who is not yet Fremen. And she's using his sort of casual name rather than.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot there. It's cool.
A lot there.
Especially a lot of boner.
Now,
a lot of boner there.
So much boner. How is Paul Atreides packing? comtobarpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know. In the subject line, just a number. We don't need any other context, just a
Won't be able
number.
to tell if it's how many breadsticks you can eat or what, but listen.
Alrighty. Well, the next day, Paul is sitting out on Dune Crest admiring the beauty of the desert when he's joined by Chani.
Yeah.
And Chani says her iconic line from the first movie, Arrakis is so beautiful when the sun is low, which can be interpreted in a couple of different ways. Maybe this is just a line she says, or maybe this is visions from the first movie, from literally the first opening moments of the film, coming true. Paul saw this exact line and perhaps even this exact moment on this dune crest in his visions all the way back in the first film.
Yeah, it's true.
Now, they're chatting about Kaladin. They're talking about oceans and this crazy thing called swimming. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
You just dive right in and you can't even swim to the bottom. It's cute. There's definitely some chemistry here. There's some sparks flying between them. And he even asks her, well, I know your name's Chani, but you must have a secret name, right? Like, what's your private Fremen name? And she tells him that it's Sihaya, which is lifted directly from the books. The name is, but the context is a little bit different.
Yes, it is. Yes, it's different. And I hate this. I will reiterate, 10 out of 10 movie. What a great movie. But I hate this.
Yeah.
In the book, Paul calls her Sihaya. He calls her it during his first descent into spice awareness during the spice orgy. He then continues to call her Sihaya. Literally, that's his term of endearment for her. He comes up with it. She is my desert spring. She is that relief in this, this world of betrayal that I can't trust anyone. She's the one person I can trust, the one person I love. It's beautiful. It's cute. In this, she's like, ugh, I hate that name. Why? It's part of some stupid prophecy. And then later, when he's waking up from the spice coma, she sheds a tear and then combines it with water of life. And someone's like, the tear of the desert spring will bring him back. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Did you just change Paul's adorable and beautiful term of endearment into a kind of feels thrown together shallow, I don't know, it feels so convenient.
It does.
I don't know. If this was true, if it is part of the prophecy that the desert spring tear will combine to bring back the Lisan al-Gaib from the dead, wouldn't Stilgar be losing his shit that she happens to be named Sihaya? He would know her secret name. I feel like this causes problems, and we don't need to dwell on them.
Right.
By all means, I didn't the first time I watched the movie, but the more I thought about it, and when I double checked the original source text, no, this is just a beautiful thing that Paul calls her, and
right,
that's just between them. So making it her fucking Sietch name really bothers me. I tried to find what her actual Sietch name is, couldn't find it, so it's possible this is something that...
Yeah, I don't think it exists.
I don't know. It feels like such a weird change.
Yeah. I agree that this rubs me a little bit the wrong way. I just simply like that this was a private, cute, sort of pet name between the two of them.
Yeah.
It's the same as calling your partner Babe or Bay or Honey Buns or Honey Boo or Boo Thang or...
Yeah. My secret Fremen name is Boo Thang. He's like, wow, Boo Thang, I love it.
I love it.
She's like,
I hate it. I prefer Johnny. Oh, okay. Can I still call you Boo Thang though? I really like it.
Will you be my Boo Thang? She is my desert Boo Thang.
The doctor in the Fremen hospital is like, what do you name your daughter?
Boo Thang.
I shall call her Boo Thang.
Boo Thang with an A, yeah. It's the Fremen spelling.
So I liked that it was a cute little loving pet name between a couple in the books, and it seems to just be conveniently used as a secret name that is then even more conveniently used as part of some prophecy to revive the Lisan al-Gaib. Right. That did feel a little too streamlined for me.
Yeah.
either way, continuing with the scene itself, Paul changes topics and asks about riding a sandworm.
Yeah.
He wants to know if he will get to ride, if Stilgar will teach him to do it. And Chani laughs. She's like, no. I mean, only Fremen ride sandworms. You're not Fremen, my guy. And she very clearly points out that you come from a bloodline of dukes and emperors and great houses. And she doesn't. The Fremen don't have those conventions.
Right. That hierarchy. Yeah.
That hierarchy. She even says explicitly, men, women, all Fremen people are equal to one another in our community. And so he is still very much an outsider in her eyes, but we know that there's some chemistry here because Paul, with his forbidden great House Atreides riz, hits her with the, I'd like to be equal to you then.
Oh,
And Chani, her heart melts clearly a little bit. And she's like, well, you're not Fremen, but maybe I can show you a little thing here and there.
right.
Maybe you could be accepted as Fremen one day.
Yeah. She says maybe you can be Fremen, which is such a huge moment. Now, I think she's saying it a little bit like flirtatiously, maybe not even fully believing it
Agreed.
herself.
Agreed.
But still, the acknowledgement that no, only Fremen ride worms, and then ending with maybe you can be Fremen and I'll show you the way is really that final gate being lifted for Paul to become Fremen or to join the Fremen fully.
Right. And then they kiss.
Woo! Woo! The old smooch. So good they had to get two angles. They got the first angle and then they got the big rotating camera shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shouts to all the brown kids whose parents are going to fast forward the kiss at this scene, like my parents did growing up. As if I didn't know what was happening, you know?
You're not allowed to have a partner who's that pale.
No outsiders. No Lisa Nalgaibs in this house.
Yeah, this is not a Mahdi household. Well, that smooch launches us into a montage of anti-harvesting activities. Clearly, Paul is making a big difference with his tactics and his ability to help out. And within this montage, we actually see that he gets his blue eyes of Abad.
Yeah.
So he's got his blue eyes. Clearly, the spice diet has had its effect. He is fully, he's in it, folks.
That's right. And that Fremen from earlier was so correct.
He looks great.
Paul Atreides has gone from a 10 somehow to an 11.
Yeah. I do, maybe this is me having blue eyes. I like his natural eyes a lot. So I'm sort of like, all right, sure.
Yeah.
But it's fine. Point is, this is one of the sequences that has so many little details we'd love to pick apart. We can't. So we'll come back to it. We're going to do more episodes about this movie. Don't you worry.
For sure. So from that montage, we move to our next scene
where
we finally, in this film, get to see the Baron.
Right.
The Baron is back, baby. Stellan Skarsgård. So in the scene, Beast Raban and honestly a comical number of Harkonnen guards, how many fucking guards do these guys need, are just like hovering outside this big door, and they're hearing some scary screams coming from the inside that horrifyingly get cut off mid-scream.
Yeah.
And Raban enters. He finds the Baron floating nude.
Yeah.
I don't know how often this happens, but this feels like it shouldn't happen so often.
All the time.
Once
if I could, I would.
It's like too many.
Yeah.
Are you saying you would float nude if you could float nude?
All the time.
Yeah.
Let it all hang out literally. Maybe eye level. Just
right. Could be a fun way to like dry off after a shower, honestly.
Oh,
Who needs a towel?
Yeah. Just hang yourself out to dry. Sweet.
Yeah. All natural, baby. Anyway, Baron fully floating nude, drying off maybe, or getting ready for one of his balsamic vinegar BAFTA tank baths. He lowers himself into it, and Raban looks around the room and he sees where the screams were coming from. Two of the doctors and or spa attendants are crumbled up and dead in the corner. So the Baron is clearly pissed off. And that becomes very clear to Raban once the Baron basically growls at him to take care of these Fremen attacks. What the fuck is going on here? I told you to squeeze this planet for everything that it's worth, and you're out here getting your ass handed to you by a couple of native tribes in the desert. Like, what is going on? He's absolutely furious, and Raban is not providing the results that he needs to recoup the costs of obliterating House Atreides. And this is a short scene. That's basically all that takes place. But I think it's actually a really important scene because it's showing us, the viewer, that Paul's military knowledge and his tactical insight into the Harkonnens are helping the Fremen turn the tide of this war, a war that has seemingly just been this bloody stalemate between these two forces for years. And that speaks to what he said in the tent, right? You've been fighting the Harkonnens for decades. My family's been fighting them for generations. I can provide you with a tactical advantage that you've never had. And so I love that we're seeing the fallout from that, with Raban getting in trouble and the Baron being pissed. Paul is providing a massive value to the Fremen, even outside of any like savior or prophecy, Mahdi, Lisan al Gaib bullshit, right? Even purely as just a guy coming in who's trained to fight,
Right. Yeah.
knows the ins and outs of military conflict, and deeply understands their enemy. That alone is so valuable to the Fremen and is changing the tide of this war.
Well, recall in the book, like Thufir notes that the tactics employed by Muad'Dib remind him of like Gurney Halleck's strategies.
Yeah, right.
So
Totally.
this is like some of the most intelligent battle planners in the universe are Paul's mentors. So you're right. It's a really great validation of all of Paul's kind of skills. I also thought the scene was good in reminding us that Baron, although he is sick, and we see him often with his little like medical IV drip thing with him, the balsamic vinegar IV drip, #same, load me up, that stuff's delicious. He's still very strong. Like, he's still a menacing person. He can crumple two humans and throw them against a corner. Like, clearly a monstrous person, and someone that, even though Beast Raban is this hulking, powerful looking man, someone that presumably Baron Harkonnen could wipe, and just, he is a very physically dominating person as well.
Completely. Totally.
Now, in our next scene, we get a sense of how much time has passed. Now, obviously, it's not the 2-year jump that we got in the book, but Paul is woken from a troublesome dream, and Chani is comforting him, tells him, quote, "It's been a while since you've had a bad dream," end quote. So, first of all, glad to know Paul's sleeping well. Good job, Paul. King. Rested king. But he explains what the dream was about. He had this vision of following someone into the south and it leading to billions dead, starved, famine.
Yeah.
Now, it will turn out that is Jessica, or maybe Alia piloting Jessica. It's a little hard to tell. They are kind of one and the same at this moment.
Yeah.
Right. And Chani's response, she's comforting, right? She's caring. She's concerned for him. Do you want to push back today? Do you want to reschedule? And he's like, no, I'm fine. And she's like, really? You sure? She cares. She loves him. But she's also skeptical. She's like, yeah, you've been having a lot of spice in your diet just over the last few months, and spice causes weird dreams sometimes. So we are seeing, again, that kind of youthful skepticism, her generational skepticism, at play as she interprets what Paul's telling her. Paul's like, oh, I had this vision of the future. She's like, oh, okay, might just be a weird dream, though. You okay? Love you, babe. He's like, thanks, Boo Thang.
Boo Thang.
But in any case, he decides not to postpone. Today is Worm Riding Day.
Yes.
This is Paul's final exam. Normally they do it when they're 12. He's doing it when he's like 27, or however early he's, like 16.
Better
15.
late than never,
And we've talked about this scene, but let's cover it again briefly.
Yeah, I mean, this is, my God, what a scene.
Yeah.
What a scene.
Yeah.
I want to point out right at the top here, before we get into the actual worm riding, something that has been speculated about online for months, ever since we saw the first footage of this film. Chani is very noticeably wearing a blue headband in this scene.
Right.
Which she hasn't been wearing in the movie up until this point at all. And many people in the fandom have speculated that this might be a Nizoni scarf, indicating that perhaps she is pregnant, because we know in the book, Paul and Chani do have a child, a tragically short-lived child in this story.
Yeah.
In the movie, that obviously isn't the case. For some context about the Nizoni Starf, here's the definition from the terminology of the Imperium at the end of the first book. Quote, the scarf pad worn at the forehead beneath the stillsuit hood by married or associated Fremen women after birth of a son. End quote.
Yeah.
So that is the canon definition of Nizoni scarf. Obviously, there is no Leto the Elder, Leto the OG in this film, but she is very clearly wearing this scarf. And even later in the film, we see her take the scarf before the Battle of Arrakeen and like wrap it around her arm or shoulder or something. They sort of wrap it around in a different place. So who knows? Maybe this is another instance of the filmmakers taking one throwaway line from the book, because the Nizoni scarf is literally, I cross-checked it in the book, it is one sentence.
Yeah.
Maybe they're taking that detail and just incorporating it into the costume design for the scene. Maybe Leto the OG was originally planned for this film, and thus the scarf was included as a symbol of that, and then ultimately got cut at some point in the production, whether in early drafts of the script or in the cutting room floor.
Right. Yeah.
So who knows? But I did want to call out that little detail and acknowledge that many people have been speculating about this, and that the
True.
blue scarf is present here.
Indeed. Very cool.
Now, okay, let's talk about this fucking worm riding scene. We have talked about it at length. We did a live stream with our patrons back when we got to see this at the IMAX preview, and we've chatted about it a little bit before on various streams and episodes. But to revisit it, stunning, right? Stunning start to finish. Like,
yeah, totally. Yes.
I think I speak for both of us when I say that this scene gave me chills. Everything from the visuals to the soundtrack to the sound design in particular,
Yeah.
the way the waves of sand wash over Paul as he's riding. Incredible stuff. The IMAX showing that we went to last night, my seat was shaking. It
Yeah.
was so loud.
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, okay, this is a 4D IMAX showing. Like, I'm about to get spritz with sand in my face.
Yeah.
This is the full experience.
Yeah.
My seat was legitimately shaking because of the overwhelming amount of like sound, in a good way, you know. And it's one of the most pivotal scenes in this movie, and I think it's handled so well. We see everything from Paul's hesitation at the top of the dune crest, kind of walking back and forth as he's judging the distance to the worm, and then his incredible dive onto it, and then him hooking it and the nostrils of the worm. Everything is so spectacular.
Yeah. It really strikes me, again, on a rewatch, just how, first of all, the return of this ongoing theme of Stilgar being a funny person. We see this as a broader theme in the movie of it's that clipped delivery that we
Right.
see all over the movie, and it's fun to see it. Now that we've seen the whole movie, it's fun to see this in context.
Yeah.
But also just how quiet the scene is, where the sound isn't being used, how it's just him and his breathing for a lot of it. And of course, Timothy still looks great in that still suit, that water fat ass. But in general, yeah, really incredible scene. One that it makes perfect sense. If I was going to try to like get someone to watch the movie, I would be like, hey, check this out.
Right.
Very, very cool. And then of course that music breaks in and it's like, oh my God.
My
incredible.
God. And the way his knee lifts up as he gains control of the worm. Ugh.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, where the 10-minute preview that we saw ends, where everyone's cheering and Stilgar is close to tears because he's seeing this prophecy come true. It's the biggest worm they've ever seen. Where that scene continues, Paul continues to ride the worm, and then the Fremen who are cheering fall into prayer. Many of them fall to their knees into the same prayer that we saw earlier during the Water of Life ceremony. And that is the point where Chani's elation dampens. She looks around, she sees her peers, her tribesmen on the ground in full prayer to this moment that her love just accomplished. And it turns sour, right? She's like, oh no, like I'm seeing it happen, right?
Right.
And she knows, we're going to see this in a second, she knows the cause of this trend. And sure enough, we go right to that cause because in the next little scene, Jessica full writing on the face, full Reverend Mother outfit, receives word. Someone runs into this room. Jessica's surrounded by, Fremen. Someone runs into the room. We see the ornate carving of the person riding the worm. And the person says, it happened, right? Like Muad'Dib conquered Shai Hulud. It was a grandfather worm. Biggest anyone's ever seen. My God, it was huge. And Jessica's like, as it was written, hell yeah, prophecy, prophecy, prophecy. Hey, we all knew this was going to happen, right? Because he's the Lisan al-Gaib. And everyone's going, oh my God, yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, good point. We hadn't even put that together yet. And then Jessica says, go, tell everyone. Tell everybody that he is he's defining these prophecies. He's fulfilling them. And it's just immediate. She's just like, boom, propaganda. Go, do it, leverage it, right?
Yeah. She's working those angles. She's pulling those levers.
It's true.
It's all coming together. After that, we return to Paul and Shani's tent. After a post-worm ride celebratory fuck session.
Woo! That's more than a kiss.
Paul wasn't the only one who rode a worm tonight, huh?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. biggest she's ever seen. Not that big, says Stilgar.
Now, in this intimate moment, in this intimate post-coital moment, Chani is expressing some of her doubts and some of her uneasiness with Paul's growing mythology among the Fremen. And she warns him that his mother is up to no good.
Right.
She is fanning the flames of this, and it's only going to get worse from here. Which, again, there's a lot to say about Chani, and we'll say it throughout this conversation and this breakdown, but this is a big departure from the books. Chani being skeptical in this movie is a big change. In the books, she is actually a Sayadina. She was Reverend Romalo's understudy and perhaps in line to be some sort of future Reverend Mother or assistant to Reverend Mother.
Right.
And so presumably in the book, she, much like almost every other Fremen, believes in the prophecy. And so this shift of her being completely against it is a very dramatic turn in this movie, for better and worse. I think there's some upsides. There's also some questions that it leaves us with.
Yeah.
And in this scene in the tent between Paul and Chani, we understand that Paul is very resistant to embracing the prophecy. But he's beginning to perhaps finally recognize that maybe he doesn't have as much control of it as he would like. There's no containing this. The myths and legends about him are already spreading like a disease. And it certainly doesn't help that his very mystical mother with a talking embryo is encouraging that along.
Right.
And ultimately, he is facing an uphill battle in being resistant to the prophecy because the Bene Gesserit have primed the Fremen culture and the Fremen people far too well to receive someone exactly like him. For generations, this has been seeded among them. That sort of generational belief is going to be hard to break.
Yeah. I also wanted to point out here, Irulan mentions the arrival of a Reverend Mother from the north to the south a little later, and says that she gets that report from Bene Gesserit missionaries active on Arrakis.
Right. Yep.
Which means they're still there. There are still Bene Gesserit plants among the Fremen.
Yep.
Spinning this word. So then we get a sense this is not just Chani and Shishakli rebelling against these older Fremen. They actually might have personal experiences with people knocking on the Sietch door. Do you have a minute to hear about the word of, and they're like, God damn it, not this again,
Right.
So earlier when Chani's like, she's Bene Gesserit. Of course, your prophecy is her bullshit. They potentially know Bene Gesserit missionaries. So it is a distant generational thing, but it's also something that the Bene Gesserit are still actively doing in this movie.
Yeah, right. And later in the movie, we see a bunch of other women dressed in Bene Gesserit garb with the big veil over their head and the beads and everything. And those are presumably the Reverend Mothers of other Sietch communities among the Fremen, because every Sietch community has their own Reverend Mother.
Right.
it's not hard to believe that some of them are Bene Gesserit plants. That's a
Totally.
very easy way to plant one of your own people.
That's very true. Yeah. Now, speaking of Jessica and Alia, Paul joins them on a little rocky thing overlooking, basically, Jessica's going to be going south. We saw a short scene earlier where she was talking to Alia. Yeah, this is now the time. We should go south. We should
Right.
tap into the fanatics who are so primed to believe in Paul, now that we have the movement going well here in the north.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica is like relaying Alia's thoughts and words to Paul. She's
Yeah.
like, she says you should be coming with us. And Paul's like, I can't go south. I got to stay up here and protect you all. Now, we know he's avoiding his vision, so it's bullshit.
Right.
And actually, Jessica calls him out on it via Alia. She's like, Alia can tell when you're lying. Which seems to be, I mean, it could be Jessica kind of using her own abilities and then like kind of being playful, but it also seems to be confirmation that Alia has truth sense, like the same truth sense that Mohaim has as the truth sayer to the Emperor.
Good catch. Yeah.
And actually, as a fun reminder, Paul also has truth sense in the book. Now, we haven't seen it come up. It's probably not going to come up at this stage. It would be a little weird to like give him powers in the third movie or whatever. But just a fun reminder, truth sense is a thing. And Alia, I'm fairly certain, has it in the book when she's born. Now, at one point, Jessica goes a little quiet and is looking inward. And Paul goes, what is she saying? And apparently, Alia is telling Jessica that Paul is blinded by love, which is a huge theme in the first few Dune books.
Right.
And also, Paul, being the cynic, he's kind of in with Shishakli and Shani and everything. He's like, this mythology, the bullshit you're peddling, I don't want any part of it. And Jessica says, but, our mythology about a savior gave the Fremen something to hope for. And that leads to Paul's "that's not hope" roar, right?
Ah, so good.
Which is so
Chills.
good. And it's kind of the beginning of the energy that he carries into the Cave of Birds later. So it's very fun to see that moment.
Yeah.
His voice also echoes. It booms, Now, I also wanted to point out here, there was a comment earlier in the Young versus Old shouting where one of them says, you've just been sitting around waiting for a savior. Like you've been waiting for someone to come, a voice from the outside world. This prophecy is how we're controlled, but it's also, there's an implication that this is why we've been stagnant as a culture, and we haven't like taken back Arrakis, because we have a huge group of Southern Fremen doing fucking nothing because they're waiting for a savior. They're waiting for a Messiah.
Yeah.
And this is such a cool thesis. I mean, Dune is about stagnation as one of the ultimate enemies of humanity. And also, it's a thesis about over-reliance on saviors, right? These are two things that Frank was so adamant in wanting to demonstrate as like dangerous. You don't want to fall into stagnation. You don't want to be overly reliant on charismatic leaders.
Yeah.
So Paul being that voice in this moment, giving them the idea that someone from outside is going to come in and help them, and that's their savior, that's not hope, is so fucking cool. And on a rewatch, that line landed even better because naturally more of the conversations are sticking in my head, and I'm starting to see some of the points that Denis is connecting. Very, very cool.
Right. And I love this rift between mother and son too.
Yeah.
Him with the "that's not hope," her with the "you have to come south and accept your fate as their prophet." It's not so overt in the books. I think Jessica is quite a bit more delicate in the books about how much to use the prophet. And she even warns him in one of my favorite lines about the dangers when religion and politics ride in the same cart. I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along those lines. But here, she's outright telling him that this is what has to be done in order for House Atreides to survive and in order for the two of them and her unborn daughter to survive.
Yeah.
So this rift certainly exists in the book. And you pointed out earlier, Paul has a thought in the original text itself where he thinks of his mother as his enemy. And it's just been amplified in this movie to try and stick the landing of the message a little bit more. So I appreciated it. I remember many moons ago we were talking and speculating about this film. And one of the things I very specifically remember saying is I hope we see a rift between Paul and his mother, because that's an important part of the book.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I'm glad. We fucking saw a rift. And in fact, Denny leaned into it more than I ever expected, because it's a bit more subtle in the book.
Totally.
But it's great. And some wonderful acting. This was a very pivotal scene in understanding these characters and their motivations. And I think Timothy and Rebecca Ferguson continued to knock it out of the park.
Which makes the next beat almost comical when Jessica leaves and she says, "We'll be waiting. All of us." And it's like
very Venom, very Venom of her.
Yeah. The symbiote takes over for a second. It's so silly. Cool flex, I guess. Very neat. Very impressed.
Yeah.
It's a cool party trick. And then this leads us to, we actually get to see Jessica in the palanquin, the Reverend Mother palanquin, on the back of a worm. They didn't show us how they got it there, but it's there. And it is going straight into a Coriolis storm, right? One of the most devastating forces on planet Arrakis. But Shai-Hulud is strong, the guide says, as they lower the thin cloth protecting her from the sand that can cut through metal and bone. But the sense of scale here is absolutely unreal. And it's incredible. It's incredible to see. This is why the southern reaches are basically impenetrable by outsiders. You need Shai-Hulud. You need ways of getting through the Coriolis storms, which is not easy to have.
Yeah. I also really liked, in front of the palanquin in front of her, the driver of the sandworm had like a particular uniform. Like he clearly had like a driver's
cool
like uniform on that had like sort of a bigger helmet with a bigger windshield that presumably protected his eyes from the sandblast and stuff. And he seemed to be harnessed in. I'd have to watch it back frame by frame once we finally get to see the Blu-ray, but it seemed like he was using the maker hooks to drive, but had additional like ropes or something like holding him in, bracing him in. And so I liked that. It's literally on screen for maybe like 1 second as the camera pans, but I couldn't help but notice the unique uniform of the worm driver up front.
I cannot fucking wait to pick this movie apart frame by frame.
I know. All right, let's move on to our next scene. We are just kind of overlooking this really calm, quiet, serene, beautiful scene. We see a Harkonnen spice depot off in the distance, and oh shit, it explodes!
Incredible. The quiet before just the cacophonous boom. So good. Spice depot explodes. We cut to a very furious Raban, who is told that 80% of that last harvest we got is now kaput. He's pissed. He leaps into an ornithopter, and this is where we get like heavy, like Black Hawk Down, World War II, Vietnam War movie vibes. Everyone's loading up into ornithopters. Raban yells, "Muad'Dib dies tonight!" Oh, so fun.
Which, as far as tactical plans go, feels a little loose, but
Listen, he's taken multiple 10-week courses at improv schools. He's like, I'm going to get in there. I'm going to make real choices. I'm going to yes and whatever happens. He lives in the moment. He's a very in the moment. He's not type A. He's
not type A.
Type V for violent.
So they're up in the air. This like whole band of ornithopters is flying out into the desert in response to this attack. And the Harkonnens show us how incompetent they are. The pilot loses the signal. This pisses off Raban, so instead of, trying to find the signal again, he just breaks the pilot's neck and tells the ship to just blindly fire at the mountain range in front of them.
Yeah, what did this fucking pilot even do? A number of the other guys who die, they're like, yeah, you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't tell Raban to take a nap because he's tired. No,
right.
Fuck you.
Right.
This time I'm like, no, I'm sorry. What did he do?
Yeah. His job, Leo, is what he did. He did exactly his job by the books.
Yeah. It's proof that it's not just if you're talking back. It's just sometimes you're just gonna get your neck broken.
You're just gonna get you're gonna get your neck twisted off.
There was also like a number of the Harkonnen guards were like vomiting and looking very nervous in the ship.
Right.
I need to look at that scene again, but it does seem like they're like, oh fuck, we're so fucked. Beast Raban is our like on the ground commander. We're so fucked. If we don't get killed by a Fremen, one of the Fremen demon Muad'Dib will be killed by our crazy commander. This sucks.
Yeah, definitely. This is not an inspired group of Harkonnen soldiers.
No.
They're all shitting their pants. Which we see why in a few moments, because once we're on the ground in this like very gorgeous shot of like smoke, orange smoke everywhere, low visibility, we see the Fremen strike from the shadows and then disappear back out into the smoke. And right in front of Raban, Muad'Dib shows himself. Raban yells out, right? He's like, Muad'Dib! And he's fucking right there. This hooded figure emerges from the smoke cloud. And Harkonnen soldiers are getting picked off left and right. And our guy Raban, he panics. He literally shits himself and runs back to the ornithopter as the Fremen attack the Harkonnen soldiers and start blowing up ornithopters left and right. We hear cries during this ambush of Muad'Dib, Muad'Dib, Mahdi. And Raban jumps into his ornithopter and is followed by a fanatical Fremen who jumps in with him as the ornithopter takes off. It's a really stunning shot where we kind of hang with him as the ornithopter leaves the ground. We leave the smoke and the color of the shot changes. Some beautiful cinematography here. We leave the orange and like get above the smoke cloud into clear air, and there's a fucking Fremen hanging off the edge.
Yeah.
And we get this like really intense, like adrenaline fueled scene where Raban basically survives here by the skin of his teeth, and the Fremen is knocked off the ornithopter. But we do hear that Fremen fighter yell Muad'Dib in this scene as well. So we're starting to see that more time has passed.
Yeah.
That the Fremen are getting closer and closer to Arrakeen. This spice depot was presumably right outside Arrakeen. And that their fanaticism and their belief in Muad'Dib has gotten to a fever pitch.
Absolutely. I'll also point out, so we talked about this figure that walks out of the smoke.
Yeah.
The fact that Paul is out there in the desert, literally like leading these attacks and actually being on the ground, also sets up this dynamic of Paul is leading the way. He is actively putting himself in danger's way because that is he's walking the walk that he talked earlier, right? He's saying, I will go north with you and I might die. He just confronted one of the members of House Harkonnen and scared him off. But like, just imagine the ways that could have gone badly, right? Stray, Lay's gun could have taken him out. He's out there though, and he's in the smoke and he's in the dirt. And also this foreshadows like, this is the kind of risk he's taking. When he fights Feyd Rautha at the end, someone goes, why is he doing this? Why is he taking this risk? And again, Stilgar's like, he does this. Like he shows us the way to be potentially self-sacrificing for the greater cause.
Right. Lead from the front.
Yeah.
Very Captain America and T'Challa of them.
Yeah. Also very Gurney, right? Gurney is almost always seen like right in the front of his men, with me as he like charges forward. So again, Paul is his mentors.
Yeah, we see him do it in this movie as well.
So back on planet Chiton, which by the way, beautiful planet.
Oh
want to live there. The bird song, the fucking
my next vacation.
Yeah, absolutely. Please. We are with Shaddam, Mohaim, and Irulan. And Shaddam is like, what do we do about this Muad'Dib and this religious prophet? Wow. And Irulan hooks him up. Irulan's clearly been paying attention in Bene Gesserit's class and approximately says something along the lines of, well, you can't oppose him directly because repression doesn't work, makes them kind of stronger, and you end up looking like a fool.
Yeah.
Now Shaddam's like,
kill him. Let's just kill him.
Assassins. We should send assassins to kill him.
Yeah.
And she's like, no. Dad, come on. Quote, prophets grow stronger when they die. End quote. Sheesh, what a good quote. Oh, I love that.
That's a thesis statement.
It is. And by the way, throughout this sequence, we see Shaddam like impressed. He's like, oh yeah, my daughter's hella smart. And she continues. He should allow it to escalate to a war. And then he should swoop in and save the day. At a time of his choosing, he should show up and he should put everything to, settle it. And then he can be kind of the savior and, the authority. Mohiam, of course, takes an opportunity to be like, she knows that because I taught her. She's great because I'm great. Well, she's
Incredible.
Great. I taught her. She's my student. And which is lovely. And Shaddam is like, you know what? You're going to make a good empress one day. Which, if only he knew. if only he knew how fucking soon she'd be empress. But yes, wonderful little scene. We get a lot more of a sense of the father-daughter dynamics. She's still proving herself to him. These are not things that she treats as particularly precious, but he's blown away.
Yeah.
I also get the sense that maybe this isn't a conversation that's happening all the time. He's not normally seeking out advice from her. But also, Mohiam tells us that she taught Irulan. So before we're even told, Irulan, we know, is part of the Bene Gesserit, which is huge.
Yeah, very cool. Now, immediately following this, we remain on Khitan. We cut to a different scene as Irulan and Mohiam are walking down a hallway. And I very quickly just wanted to point out, again, the Khitan set design is so beautiful.
Yes.
We still hear those birds chirping in the background. And there's these like circular doors and very like rectangle hallways and walls. It's very sort of Chinese, Japanese, Asian-centric design, which is in stark contrast, of course, to like the Middle East, African-inspired design of the Sietches and Arrakis.
Right.
So I loved that we got that distinction between planets. And then, of course, Giedi Prime later is dramatically different as well.
Yeah. And then like the craggy like fjords of like watery Caladan, right? Like Scotland or Norway.
Totally. So in this scene, Irulan and Mohiam are chatting, and Irulan is starting to put two and two together. She's like, wait a second. Muad'Dib, that's a weird name for a prophet. Doesn't that mean kangaroo mouse? And it also means lead the way. Isn't lead the way one of our teachings?
Yeah.
Could this be... Wait a second, is Paul still alive? Did we kill all the Atreides?
Mohiam's like, she's starting to... You shut up right now! Don't... Shut up!
Yeah, absolutely. Mohiam panics. She's like, don't ever say that out loud again. And especially not near your dad.
Thumbs down, bitch! Shut up!
So Irulan clearly onto something here. Mohiam clearly involved very deeply in that something.
Yeah.
She's got her hands in all the pies.
Yeah, she loves pies.
And of course, Paul is alive, as we know.
Yeah.
And Mohiam points out that, like, yeah, this is all part of our plans. Don't let your dad know. Because your dad broke all sorts of fucking laws
right,
by betraying House Atreides and secretly helping the Harkonnens wipe them off the map. If the other great houses realize that the Emperor can start wiping them out at whim, they will all turn against him.
Right. He'll lose the throne.
So, Irulan, how about you keep your mouth shut?
Yeah. I also, to be clear, I got that Mohiam doesn't know if Paul's alive. Like, she knows that they did what they could to, like, set the way.
Yeah.
But my understanding is she doesn't yet have intel on whether or not Paul is alive. So she's saying, if he's alive, he knows the secrets, and that sucks for House Carino. Like, that sucks for us.
That's dangerous, right? You best hope he's not alive.
Right.
Is what she's basically threatening here.
Oh, and I also love the quote, we're Bene Gesserit. We don't hope. We plan.
We plan.
Oh, so good. Fuck.
Yes. I thought the Bene Gesserit were handled so well in this movie.
Yeah, except for the fucking voice all the time. Change the channel. It's okay, you just ask me. You don't have to voice everything.
Raise the volume.
Raise the volume by 2 points. Put it back down. Yeah. Anyway.
You could try please once in a while. God damn.
They don't know about the word please. That's why they just keep using the voice. Well, I either tell you to do it and it sounds rude, or I force you to do it, and then I don't have to worry about you saying no.
Yeah. Don't have to worry about free will and any of that shit.
We're Benny Gesserit. We don't have trust issues. You have trust issues. Fuck you. Well, this also pivots. She's like, so we don't know if Paul is alive or not. And naturally, we spent 90 generations breeding the House Atreides. So we've invested a lot in them. But this is why we have other candidates.
Yep.
And Irulan's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she's like Feyd, for instance, Feyd Rautha, Harkonnen.
Yep.
And Irulan's like, fucking run that by me again?
Not that guy.
Elvis Presley? He's a psychopath. You know, like, he's fucking crazy. And Mohiam's effectively like, LOL, it doesn't really matter. Like, yeah, psychopath's fine. As long as we can control them, it's cool.
Yep. And this, of course, sets up the introduction of Giddy Prime and Austin Butler as Feyd Rautha.
Man, he's in good shape. God damn.
Oh, he's in good shape.
Some more push-ups. Damn it.
And, we have so many thoughts on that, and we have so much to say, and we
you wanna
can't
talk
wait
about
to
them now?
talk about it.
You want to talk about them right now?
No.
Okay, no, me neither.
This is where we got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
This is roughly the halfway point of the movie, so we're going to stop this episode here. Leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger, folks, but not to worry. In next week's episode, we will finish up our massive deep dive analysis of this movie. We'll pick up right where we've left off. We'll talk about Feyd, the stunning scenes on Giddy Prime, the amazing Colosseum fight, Margot Fenring's seduction, my God.
Leia Seydoux.
Leia Seydoux, my God, I do. So all of that's going to be in our next episode. And we ask for a little bit of patience as we get that production figured out. This episode is always one of the biggest and most difficult to complete and get done. So we will see you next week with it.
Indeed we will. And I just want to point out, I have, 3,700 words briefly summarizing the second half of this movie.
Right.
That was up until almost 1:30 in the morning writing up. So very exciting. Can't wait to talk about it. But
can't wait.
Before we let you go, we want to remind you of some ways to support the show. Keep in touch. This is a time of unimaginable work. The workload right now is really unreasonable. So if you want to support us, if you want to make our lives just a little bit easier, please, cost of a cup of coffee. You could become a patron at patreon.com/comjabar, or you could check out some Dune themed merchandise and swag from our merch store. Both of those links are going to be in the show notes, so check those out. And if you are already supporting us, thank you. I'll also point out a lot of people are seeing Dune Part 2. What a great time. Word of mouth is the best way to support a podcast.
Yeah.
If you have a friend or a family member who just saw the movie and went, fuck, that was good, feel free to let them know. We have spoiler-free episodes. Literally, we sat down, wrote the script with the intention to make someone's first time journeying through Frank's universe a pleasant and enjoyable one without ruining any of the surprise. So we have been very deliberate with that. Those things are there waiting for them. We even have that little intro video that you recorded, Abu.
That's right. Great. That's right. Yeah, definitely. Word of mouth is quite possibly the best way for a small grassroots show like us to keep growing.
Indeed.
In addition to that, we'd love to hear from you too. My God, there's so much to talk about in this movie.
Yeah.
We covered so much ground today, but we barely made a dent, so we want to hear your thoughts as well. Email us at gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts. Send us your questions. Tell us whether this is your first experience with Dune or whether you've been waiting since 1979 for this goddamn movie. We want to hear it all.
Why 79?
I don't know. It's the first. It's as far back as I can think. The world perhaps doesn't exist before then in my mind.
He's a very young Earth creationist. He's like, fuck you with this 6,000 years. That's old as shit. I think the world is 40 years old.
Gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts on the movie. And also, Tell me what took place before 1979. What the heck was going on?
Yeah, if you think that exists, prove it. Tell us something that happened. But you can't. But you can't, idiot. People from the South, they believe in pre-1979. But us Northern Fremen, we know the difference.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's all bullshit.
It's all bullshit. All bullshit. All right, Alia, a little question for you here at the end.
Yeah.
What's your secret Fremen name? If you had one.
Gosh. Just Bigfoot. Just big old foot.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Oh, they got big feet. And they're like, look, that guy's got big feet.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
okay.
I want that to be a source of intimidation for the Harkonnens. They're
Right.
like cowering in the dust cloud, and they go, "Oh my God, what size shoes do you wear?" Ah!
Right. They're like, I don't know, man. We don't have a thumper, but Bigfoot's here. Just tell him to stomp around for a little bit.
Yeah,
the worm
I'll
will
just
show
do
up.
a little rap tatty dance. What about yourself? What's your secret Fremen name?
Oh goodness. I asked you this question without being prepared with my own answer, so now I've been completely caught off guard.
I kind of got that impression.
So how about this?
Oh,
next episode.
Yes. No. Better suggestion.
Oh.
Hey, listeners, what's our secret Fremen name? Give us secret Fremen names. Post
You
it in
name
Discord.
us.
Yeah, you name us.
Yeah, you be our Stilgar and give us our Fremen names.
Oh, we could do a poll. Oh shit. Yeah. Write in suggestions. In like some amount of time, we'll make a poll about it. And we'll do it democratic.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, Bigfoot's off the table.
Can't do Bigfoot.
No. Can't wait to hear it.
Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic. So help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lord Party Podcast Network on lordparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. We're also on TikTok at Gamjabar Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you on the golden path.